You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. What if I told you that the chaos in your life isn't coming from people, circumstances, or bad luck, but from the way your own mind reacts to them? What if the constant overthinking, the emotional exhaustion, the sudden anger, the silent frustration, all of it could be reduced, not by escaping the world, but by mastering yourself within it? Every day you're bombarded with noise, opinions you didn't ask for, expectations you never agreed to, problems you didn't create. And slowly, without realizing it, your mind becomes crowded, restless, reactive. You lose clarity, you lose calm, you lose yourself. The Stoics discovered something powerful thousands of years ago, something that feels almost forbidden in today's hyper-emotional world. A mental key, simple, brutal, and effective. A way to stay sane while everything around you pulls you toward madness. In this video, you'll learn that key, not as philosophy for books, but as a weapon for real life, for your thoughts, your reactions, your peace. Watch this video till the very end, not casually, not distracted, because if you truly understand this principle, it won't just change how you think, it will change how unshakable you become. Number 1, control what is within you. Release what is outside you. There is a quiet sentence at the heart of Stoicism that, once understood, rearranges your inner world. Control what is within you. Release what is outside you. It sounds simple, almost too clean to matter. But simplicity is deceptive. This single distinction, practiced daily, is the difference between a restless mind and a steady one, between being dragged by life and standing firmly inside it. Most of your stress does not come from events themselves. It comes from your attempt to manage what was never yours to command. Outcomes, opinions, timing, recognition, the moods of others, the direction of the world. Your mind reaches for these things instinctively, as if effort alone could bend them. And when they resist, which they always do, tension accumulates. You feel it as anxiety, irritation, exhaustion, not because you are weak, but because you are misdirected. Epictetus made this brutally clear. Some things are up to us and some things are not. He wasn't offering comfort. He was offering a filter, a mental boundary. Everything inside that boundary, your judgments, your intentions, your choices, your effort belongs to you. Everything outside it does not. Sanity begins the moment you stop confusing the two. You've been trained, subtly and constantly, to believe that control equals safety. That if you just think enough, plan enough, worry enough, you can prevent discomfort. But worry is not preparation. It is the misuse of imagination. When you try to control what is outside you, your mind never rests. It scans, anticipates, replays. It tightens. And over time, that tightness becomes your default state. The Stoic move is not denial. It is precision. You redirect your energy with intention. You stop pouring force into what resists you and begin investing it where it compounds. Inside. Always inside. Wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say you control your emotions directly. He said you control your mind. Emotions follow judgments. Change the judgment and the emotion eventually reorganizes itself. This is not instant. It is practiced. This is where most people quit. They expect immediate relief. Stoicism does not promise that. It promises stability over time. The calm that comes from alignment, not avoidance. To control what is within you means you take responsibility for your interpretations. Not your first reaction. Those are often automatic, but your second one. The pause, the inner response. You begin asking yourself better questions. Is this within my command? Is my distress coming from my judgment or from reality itself? Am I trying to manage an outcome or am I shaping my character? These questions slow you down, and slowing down is not weakness, it is discipline. Seneca warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." That suffering is optional once you learn where to intervene. You don't intervene in the world. You intervene in the story you're telling yourself about it. That story is yours, which means it's adjustable. Releasing what is outside you is not resignation. It is clarity. You stop negotiating with what does not listen. You stop demanding guarantees from an uncertain universe. You stop tying your inner state to conditions you cannot enforce. This release feels uncomfortable at first because it removes the illusion of control. But once the illusion drops, something else appears: relief. You realize you don't need to carry everything. You were never meant to. This is where sanity returns, not as happiness, not as constant calm, but as proportion. Your reactions begin to match reality instead of overpowering it. You become less reactive, not because you care less, but because you choose better. There is a habit here you must build deliberately. Several, actually. And they are internal, invisible to others, but transformative to you. One practice is daily distinction. At the start or end of the day, quietly list what troubled you. Then divide it mentally into two categories: what depended on your will and what did not. No drama, no justification, just separation. This trains your perception. Over time, your mind begins to make this distinction automatically in real time before stress spirals. Another practice is controlled effort. You commit fully to your actions, but you detach from the outcome. This is not indifference. It is maturity. You give your best without demanding a specific result in return. When the mind insists on payoff, tension follows. When effort becomes its own reward, steadiness replaces it. Epictetus again, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish, but wish for everything to happen as it actually does. This is not passive. It is adaptive strength. You align yourself with reality instead of fighting it. Reality always wins. The Stoic simply chooses not to lose energy in the fight. You may notice resistance inside you as you practice this. A voice that says, "If I let go, I'll become careless." That voice is fear disguised as responsibility. Letting go of what is outside you does not make you negligent. It makes you focused. You stop dispersing your attention and begin sharpening it. Control what is within you also means controlling your standards. You stop measuring your worth by external reactions. Praise and blame lose their grip. Success and failure stop defining you. Your metric becomes internal. Did I act with intention? Did I respond with discipline? Did I preserve my character? Reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice how personal that is. Not if it is rewarded. Not if it is approved. Rightness and truth live inside the boundary of your control. That's where your attention belongs. Here is another exercise. When something unsettles you, silently repeat, "This is outside me. My response is inside me." Say it slowly. Not as a mantra, but as a reminder. Then choose one internal action you can take. Adjust your tone, your posture, your interpretation, your next step. You are reclaiming agency without overreaching. Over time, something profound happens. Your mind stops racing ahead of itself. You become harder to destabilize. Not because life becomes gentle, but because you stop letting it invade places it does not own. Sanity in the Stoic sense is not emotional numbness. It is emotional order. Feelings arise, but they don't dominate. Thoughts appear, but they don't hijack. You remain centered, not because you suppress chaos, but because you've built a boundary it cannot cross. This path requires repetition, daily correction, gentle persistence. You will forget. You will overreach. You will try to control what resists you again. That's fine. The practice is not perfection, it's return. Each time you come back to this distinction, Inside, outside, you strengthen it. Each time you release what is not yours, you reclaim what is. And slowly, steadily, your mind becomes a place you can live in comfortably. That is the Stoic key to sanity. Not control of life, control of yourself. Not mastery of events, mastery of response. Take it seriously. Practice it daily. And watch how much lighter everything feels when you finally stop carrying what was never yours to hold. Number 2, emotional discipline over emotional reaction. Sanity, real sanity, isn't about feeling nothing. It's about not being ruled by what you feel. Most people misunderstand this. They think emotional discipline means suppression, stiffness, or pretending you're unaffected. That's not discipline. That's avoidance. Stoicism never asked you to amputate emotion. It asked you to stop letting emotion seize the steering wheel. There's a difference, a profound one. You already know what emotional reaction feels like. It's immediate, hot, automatic. Something happens, and before you've even decided how to respond, your body has decided for you. Your pulse changes, your thoughts narrow, your identity collapses into the moment. Reaction feels honest, but it's usually lazy. It borrows energy from impulse instead of intention. And the Stoics would tell you, gently but firmly, that this is where most inner chaos begins. Wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Read that again slowly. Power over your mind, not your circumstances, not other people, not outcomes, just your inner governance. Emotional discipline is the practice of reclaiming that governance moment by moment, breath by breath, thought by thought. Reaction feels natural because it's fast. Discipline feels unnatural because it asks you to pause, to insert a gap between stimulus and response. That gap is everything. That gap is where sanity lives. Without it, you're dragged from mood to mood, opinion to opinion, identity to identity. With it, you become anchored, stable, harder to shake. You don't need to eliminate emotion to master it. You need to observe it without immediately obeying it. Anger arises, anxiety whispers, desire pulls, fear tightens. None of these are commands, they are signals. Stoicism teaches you to treat emotions like weather passing through the mind, not orders that must be executed. The storm may be loud, but you are not the storm. You are the sky it moves through. Epictetus put it bluntly, do not let the force of impression carry you away. Impressions are first reactions, raw interpretations. They arrive uninvited. Discipline begins when you stop mistaking arrival for authority. Just because a feeling shows up doesn't mean it gets to decide your behavior. This alone, practiced consistently, changes everything. Emotional reaction narrows you. Emotional discipline expands you. Reaction compresses time into the present moment. Discipline stretches time, giving you perspective. Reaction demands expression. Discipline allows choice. One leads to regret, confusion, and mental exhaustion. The other leads to clarity, consistency, and self-respect. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Reacting feels powerful in the moment, but it leaves you weaker afterward. Discipline feels uncomfortable in the moment, but it leaves you stronger afterward. Stoicism always favors the long arc over the short relief. Seneca warned, no man is free who is not master of himself. Emotional reaction is a form of slavery. It hands your autonomy to circumstance. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. In fact, discipline often makes you warmer, more measured, more trustworthy. When people know you won't explode, spiral, or collapse into every feeling, they feel safer around you. And more importantly, you feel safer inside yourself. Sanity grows where predictability of self exists. You may notice resistance when you try to practice this. Your mind will argue, it will say, but this feeling is justified. Maybe it is. Stoicism doesn't deny justification. It questions usefulness. Being justified and being governed are not the same thing. You can acknowledge emotion without kneeling to it. You can feel deeply without reacting blindly. There's a simple daily exercise the Stoics would quietly approve of. When a strong emotion arises, label it internally. Just one word: anger, fear, desire, disappointment, nothing more. No story, no explanation. This creates distance. You're no longer inside the emotion, you're observing it. That observation weakens its grip and strengthens your authority. Another practice is delaying response. Not forever, just long enough to let the first wave pass. Tell yourself, I don't need to respond while this is loud. This isn't avoidance, it's strategy. Emotions peak and fall. Reason arrives after the peak. If you wait, you regain access to your full mind. Reminded himself, the mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. Emotional discipline turns emotional energy into fuel instead of fire. The same intensity that could destroy your peace can be redirected into focus, restraint, and resolve. You are not trying to become emotionless. You are trying to become unshakable. There's a difference. Emotionless people are brittle. Unshakable people are flexible. They bend without breaking. They feel without drowning. They choose without rushing. Over time, this practice rewires you. You stop fearing emotions because you trust yourself with them. You stop reacting because you don't need to prove anything. You become quieter inside, not numb, quiet. And that quiet is powerful. The Stoics never promised comfort, they promised freedom. Emotional discipline is the price of that freedom, not paid once but daily, in small moments, in pauses no one sees, in decisions that don't get applause. So start now, not tomorrow, not when life is calmer. When emotion rises next, don't suppress it. Don't express it immediately. Sit with it. Watch it. Let it pass through you without turning you into something you're not proud of. That's the Stoic key to sanity. Not control of the world, but command of yourself. And once you taste that, you won't want to go back. Number 3, detachment from outcomes. Commitment to effort. Most people lose their sanity not because life is cruel, but because they demand guarantees from a world that never offered any. You feel calm when things go your way and unravel when they don't, not realizing that the real disturbance is not the outcome but your attachment to it. The Stoics saw this clearly. They understood that peace does not come from controlling results, but from committing fully to what is within your control and releasing everything else. Detachment from outcomes, commitment to effort. That is the quiet axis around which sanity rotates. You've been conditioned to tie your emotional stability to results. Success feels like relief. Failure feels like threat. Waiting feels unbearable because your mind keeps reaching into the future, demanding certainty. But the future owes you nothing. Wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Read that slowly. Strength does not come from forcing life to cooperate. It comes from withdrawing your nervous system from things it was never meant to manage. Detachment does not mean indifference. This is where most people misunderstand Stoicism. You are not being told to stop caring. You are being told to care correctly, to invest your energy where it actually produces stability. Effort is yours. Discipline is yours. Intention is yours. Outcomes are not. When you reverse this, when you obsess over results and treat effort casually, you create anxiety by design. Think about how often your mood shifts based on things you cannot command. Approval, timing, recognition, reactions. These are externals. Epictetus was blunt about this. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Not tolerate it, not resent it, take it as it happens. This is not passive resignation. It is psychological realism. Sanity begins when you stop negotiating with reality. When you stop saying, I'll be at peace once this works out. That bargain never pays. There is always another condition, another variable, another delay. Peace postponed becomes peace. The Stoic alternative is radical but grounding. You place your pride in showing up fully, not in how the story ends. This shift changes how effort feels. Effort stops being a transaction. I do this so I get that, and becomes an expression of character. You act well because acting well is who you are, not because it guarantees a reward. Seneca captured this when he wrote, "The wise man is content with himself." Contentment here doesn't mean complacency. It means internal sufficiency. You are no longer emotionally dependent on outcomes to justify your effort. Notice what happens when you truly commit to effort. Your focus narrows, your attention sharpens, you stop leaking energy into speculation and fear. The mind becomes quieter because it has a job. Do what can be done now. Anxiety thrives in abstraction. Sanity lives in execution. There is also a hidden freedom here. When you detach from outcomes, you become harder to manipulate. Praise loses its grip. Threats lose their sting. You are no longer pulled back and forth by imagined futures. You become anchored. Reminded himself daily, do not disturb yourself by imagining your whole life at once. Detachment is how you stop time-traveling mentally and start living where your feet are. This does not make you weaker. It makes you resilient. When results disappoint, you do not collapse because your identity was never built on them. When results succeed, you do not become reckless because your discipline does not depend on applause. You remain steady either way. That steadiness is sanity. To practice this, you must build a new internal metric. Instead of asking, "Did this work?" ask, "Did I act in accordance with my values?" Instead of measuring your day by what happened, measure it by how you showed up. This retrains your nervous system. Over time, your emotional spikes soften because they are no longer tied to variables outside your reach. Here is a simple but demanding exercise. At the start of the day, identify one effort you will commit to fully, regardless of outcome, not 5. 1. Tell yourself, "My responsibility ends with the quality of my action." Then release the result deliberately. If your mind tries to chase it later, bring it back, not with frustration but with firmness. You are training obedience to reason. Another exercise is outcome fasting. For a set period, refuse to mentally rehearse results. No anticipation. No, when your mind drifts there, return to the present task. This is difficult because the mind is addicted to control, but each return strengthens your authority over it. Epictetus would approve. If you wish to be invincible, make sure that no one can upset you by anything outside your own reasoned choice. You may notice resistance at first. A voice that says, "If I detach, I'll lose motivation." That voice is wrong. Detachment removes emotional desperation, not drive. In fact, effort becomes cleaner without anxiety polluting it. You act with more precision, not less. Calm is not the enemy of ambition. It is its stabilizer. Over time, this philosophy reshapes your inner life. You stop pleading with the future. You stop replaying the past. You invest in what you can actually govern, your thoughts, your actions, your discipline. This is not a denial of desire. It is a refinement of it. Sanity is not a personality trait. It is a practice, a daily decision to place your emotional weight where it belongs. The Stoics did not promise comfort. They promised clarity. And clarity is what keeps you grounded when the world remains uncertain. So take this seriously. Detach where you have no authority. Commit where you do. Let effort be your pride and release the illusion that outcomes define you. When you do this consistently, peace stops being a reward and starts being a baseline. And that quietly is the Stoic key to sanity. Number 4, silence over unnecessary explanation. There is a quiet madness that creeps in when you feel compelled to explain yourself to everyone, all the time. You feel it in the tightening of your chest when words spill faster than they should. You feel it in the exhaustion that follows conversations where nothing was actually resolved, only defended. The Stoics understood this trap deeply. They knew that sanity is not maintained by saying more, but by knowing when not to speak at all. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is not weakness. It is discipline. It is clarity protecting itself. You are not obligated to narrate your inner world to people who have not earned access to it. You are not required to justify every decision, every boundary, every shift in direction. Yet most people do exactly that. They over-explain because they fear being misunderstood. They over-explain because they seek validation disguised as clarity. They over-explain because silence feels like exposure. But what actually happens is the opposite. Excess explanation dilutes authority. It hands your emotional center to external approval. Epictetus put it plainly, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. This is not an invitation to self-erasure. It is a reminder that your peace does not depend on being correctly perceived. The need to correct every assumption others make about you is a form of bondage. Silence breaks that chain. When you stop trying to manage impressions, you reclaim your energy. You stop bleeding attention. The Stoic mind understands something modern culture resists. Not every misunderstanding deserves clarification. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every challenge is an invitation. When you rush to explain, you often reinforce the very dynamic you want to escape. You signal that you are on trial, that you need approval, that your internal compass is fragile. Silence, on the other hand, communicates self-trust without a single word. Reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Notice the precision here. He doesn't say explain, he doesn't say persuade, he says be. Explanations are often substitutes for embodiment. When your life aligns with your values, explanations become unnecessary. Your consistency speaks in ways language cannot. There is also a hidden cost to over-explaining that few people talk about. Every explanation invites negotiation. The moment you justify, you open the door to debate. You give others the illusion that they are entitled to weigh in. Silence closes that door. It keeps your boundaries intact. It protects your nervous system from constant intrusion. This does not mean becoming cold or withdrawn. Stoic silence is not emotional shutdown. It is selective engagement. It is knowing when words will add clarity and when they will only add noise. Seneca warned, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Much of your urge to explain is fueled by imagined consequences. You picture rejection. You picture judgment. You picture chaos if you don't clarify. Most of that is fiction. Silence reveals this. When you don't explain, the world rarely collapses. It simply moves on. You begin to notice something powerful when you practice this. The more you speak only when necessary, the more weight your words carry. People listen differently. Conversations slow down. You feel less scattered, less reactive. Silence becomes a filter. Only what truly matters passes through. This is where sanity returns. Sanity is not loud. It does not argue for its existence. It rests. It observes. It responds instead of reacts. When you stop filling every gap with explanation, you create space. Space to think. Space to breathe. Space to choose. Here is a practice you can start today. The next time you feel the impulse to explain yourself, pause for 3 breaths, just 3. Ask yourself quietly, am I explaining to clarify or to soothe my own discomfort? If it's the latter, stay silent. Let the discomfort pass. This is training. Each time you do this, you strengthen self-command. Another exercise is to shorten your responses intentionally. Say less than feels natural. Let sentences end sooner. Resist the urge to add disclaimers, justifications, emotional footnotes. This is not about being mysterious. It's about being centered. Over time, Your mind learns that nothing bad happens when you don't overcommunicate. Your anxiety loosens its grip. There will be moments when silence feels risky, when you worry it might be misread. That's where Stoic courage comes in. Courage is not confrontation. Courage is restraint under pressure. Courage is trusting your values enough not to defend them constantly. Epictetus taught that you always have power over one thing: your response. Silence is a response, often the strongest one. As you adopt this habit, you'll notice how much mental noise disappears. Fewer replayed conversations, fewer imagined rebuttals, fewer internal arguments. Your mind becomes quieter because you are no longer outsourcing your peace. You stop needing others to understand in order for you to be okay. This is the Stoic key to sanity. Not indifference but discernment, not withdrawal but composure, not suppression but self-respect. You speak when it matters. You stay silent when it doesn't. And in that balance, your mind steadies. Take this seriously. Practice it deliberately. Silence is not emptiness. It is space reclaimed, and in that space, clarity grows. Number 5, acceptance of reality without resentment. Sanity is not about controlling the world. It's about refusing to be at war with it. Most people don't lose their peace because life is hard. They lose it because they keep arguing with what already exists. They demand that reality apologize. They insist it should have been different, and that quiet, constant resistance becomes a kind of internal madness. The Stoics saw this clearly. They understood that peace begins the moment you stop resenting what is and start working with it. Acceptance in the Stoic sense is often misunderstood. You're told it means weakness, surrender, passivity. It doesn't. It means clarity. It means seeing the world as it is, not as you wish it had been 5 minutes ago. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't promise comfort. He promises strength. Strength comes from alignment, not denial. Resentment is the real poison. Not pain, not loss, not inconvenience. Resentment, it's the internal protest against reality. It's the voice that says, this shouldn't be happening to me, as if the universe owes you an explanation. That voice keeps you trapped. It drains energy. It fractures attention. You're no longer dealing with the present moment. You're fighting a phantom version of how things should be. Acceptance without resentment is the decision to stop that fight. You don't have to like reality. You don't have to praise it. You simply stop insulting it in your own mind. Epictetus put it plainly. Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. Smoothly doesn't mean easily. It means without internal friction. You've felt this friction before. The exhaustion that comes not from effort but from resistance. The mind replaying, rewriting, revisiting. The body tense, even when nothing is actively wrong in the moment. That's resentment living rent-free in your nervous system. Stoicism doesn't tell you to suppress emotion. It teaches you to stop feeding the ones that consume you. Here's the shift you must make if you want sanity. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, what is required of me now? That question moves you out of complaint and into agency. The moment you accept reality as the starting point, your energy returns. Not because the situation improved, but because your mind stopped leaking power. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Resentment is pre-suffering. It's mental interest charged on events that already occurred. Acceptance cuts the interest rate to 0. You deal with the facts once, not 100 times. This doesn't mean you stop improving your life. In fact, acceptance is what makes improvement possible. You cannot change what you refuse to see clearly. When resentment clouds perception, every action is reactive. When acceptance clears perception, action becomes deliberate, calm, precise. There is a habit here you must train. When something undesirable appears, you name it neutrally in your mind. No adjectives, no judgments, just facts. This is what is happening. That sentence alone creates distance between you and emotional escalation. You're no longer inside the storm, you're observing it. Another practice, separate pain from insult. Pain is inevitable, insult is optional. The mind loves to add commentary. This is unfair. This ruins everything. I don't deserve this. Each thought sharpens the blade. Practice letting events be painful without making them personal. Pain passes, personal stories linger. Also warned, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Read that slowly. He's not denying discomfort. He's exposing the lever, the estimate. That's where resentment hides. Change the estimate and the emotional weight shifts. You don't eliminate resentment by force. You starve it by refusing to rehearse it. Each time your mind loops back to complaint, you gently return to what can be done now. Not tomorrow, not in theory. Now, this is discipline, not punishment, training. There's a strange freedom that appears when you do this consistently. You stop being shocked by reality. You stop expecting fairness from chaos. You stop demanding emotional refunds from the past. And because of that, you become steadier than most people around you, less reactive, less brittle. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." If you want sanity, you must decide to be someone who does not quarrel with reality. That identity choice matters. You're no longer someone who asks life to behave. You're someone who adapts without bitterness. Try this exercise daily. At the end of the day, identify one thing you resisted mentally, just one. Then rewrite the event in neutral language in your mind. Remove blame, remove drama. Observe how the emotional charge softens. This is not self-deception, it's self-command. Another exercise. When frustration arises, take a slow breath and say internally, "This is already here." Not as resignation, but as grounding. You're anchoring yourself in the present instead of a fantasy timeline where things went differently. That anchor is sanity. Acceptance without resentment doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. You stop wasting strength on protest and redirect it into response. Over time, people will notice something about you. You don't spiral the way others do. You don't dramatize. You don't collapse inward. That's not luck. That's training. The Stoics didn't promise happiness. They promised freedom from unnecessary suffering. And that freedom begins the moment you stop resenting reality and start cooperating with it. You don't bow to the world. You stand within it, clear-eyed, unbittered, intact. This is the key. Practice it daily. Not perfectly, consistently. Each moment you accept without resentment is a small return to sanity, and over time, those moments compound into a mind that cannot be easily shaken. Number 6. Self-respect before external validation. There is a quiet kind of madness that creeps in when your sense of worth depends on applause. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up as overthinking, second-guessing, emotional volatility, the constant need to be seen, affirmed, approved. You might not even call it insecurity. You might call it ambition, connection, or sensitivity. But underneath it all is the same fragile bargain. I will feel okay about myself if the world agrees with me. The Stoics saw this trap clearly, and they warned against it relentlessly. Sanity, to them, was never about controlling life. It was about reclaiming ownership of your inner verdict. You lose stability the moment you outsource your self-respect, the moment your peace becomes dependent on reactions you cannot command. Epictetus put it plainly, if you want to be invincible, make no treaty with things outside your control. External validation is always outside your control. Praise arrives late, leaves early, and often contradicts itself. If you build your identity on it, your mind becomes a weather vane, spinning with every shift in opinion. Self-respect is different. It is not loud. It does not beg to be noticed. It is an internal alignment between what you value and how you act. When those two are in harmony, you feel solid, not euphoric, not inflated, just steady. And steadiness is sanity. Most people misunderstand self-respect. They think it's arrogance or stubborn pride. It's neither. It's discipline. It's the daily act of refusing to betray yourself for comfort, approval, or relief. The Stoics never asked, "How do I look?" They asked, "Did I act in accordance with reason and virtue today?" That question alone can quiet a restless mind. Reminded himself, "I must not be influenced by what other people think." Not because other people are evil or irrelevant, but because their opinions are unstable. You cannot build a stable mind on unstable ground. When praise feels good, you rise. When criticism lands, you fall. That up and down rhythm exhausts the soul. You start performing instead of living, curating instead of choosing, reacting instead of deciding. When self-respect comes first, something profound shifts. You stop chasing permission. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop bending your principles to avoid discomfort. And in that space, clarity returns. You may not always feel good, but you feel right. And feeling right lasts longer than feeling liked. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The hunger for validation is never about others. It's about doubt within you. You look outward because you don't trust your own judgment yet. The Stoic path is about training that trust, not through affirmations or bravado, but through repeated alignment between thought and action. Each time you do what you know is right, especially when no one is watching, you deposit something into your inner account. Over time, that account compounds into self-respect. Seneca warned, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." Harmony with yourself means you are not at war internally. You are not arguing with your conscience. You are not justifying behavior you know is beneath you. That internal peace is the foundation of mental sanity. Without it, even success feels hollow. You might notice how much energy you spend managing perception, editing words, softening stances, seeking reassurance. Now imagine redirecting that energy inward, into consistency, into standards, into personal integrity. The mind becomes quieter when it no longer needs constant feedback to know where it stands. This does not mean isolation. It does not mean indifference. It means hierarchy. Self-respect first, feedback second. When your inner compass is strong, external input becomes information, not identity. You can listen without collapsing. You can disagree without anger. You can accept praise without addiction. Here's a practical exercise to begin shifting this. Each night, ask yourself one question: did I respect myself today? Not did others approve? Not did things go well? Just that. Answer honestly. No drama, no judgment. If the answer is no, note where you compromised. If the answer is yes, sit with it quietly. You're training your mind to value alignment over applause. Another exercise: practice voluntary discomfort without announcement. Do something difficult, principled, or restrained and tell no one. No sharing, no signaling. This strengthens self-respect because it removes the reward of validation. The act stands on its own. Your mind learns that worth does not require witnesses. Epictetus also said, "Never depend on the admiration of others. There is no strength in it." Strength comes from self-command, from knowing that even if misunderstood, you remain intact, from realizing that sanity is not about being agreed with, but about being anchored. There will be moments when choosing self-respect costs you approval. Those moments are tests, not of character in the dramatic sense, but of psychological maturity. Can you tolerate being misjudged without rushing to correct it? Can you stand alone without feeling abandoned? Each time you can, your nervous system settles, your thoughts slow, your reactions soften. This is why self-respect is the Stoic key to sanity. It removes the endless negotiation with the world. It ends the need to prove. You are no longer bargaining your values for peace because peace is already inside the boundary you've drawn. Take this seriously, not as a concept but as a daily practice. Decide who you are when no one is clapping. Decide what you refuse to do even if it costs you attention. Over time, your mind will stop spinning. You will feel less pulled, less fractured, less reactive. And one day you'll notice something subtle but powerful. You still hear opinions. You still receive praise or criticism, but they pass through you instead of defining you. You remain steady. That steadiness is not numbness, it's freedom. As wrote, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. When those thoughts are grounded in self-respect rather than external validation, sanity is no longer fragile. It becomes durable, quiet, unshakable. Start there. Build inward. Let the world react however it wants. Your task is simpler, harder, and far more rewarding: to live in a way that allows you to respect yourself when the room is silent. Number 7. Mastery of perception shapes inner peace. Sanity in the Stoic sense is not the absence of pressure. It's the absence of distortion. What unsettles you isn't the world itself, but the lens through which you're viewing it. The Stoics understood this with unsettling clarity. As reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That sentence alone contains an entire operating system for inner peace. It tells you that your stability is not negotiated with the outside world. It is authored internally. You often assume peace comes from arranging circumstances correctly, from fixing outcomes, from removing uncertainty. But Stoicism cuts through that illusion without mercy. Peace is perceptual. It emerges when you learn to see events without immediately decorating them with fear, judgment, or narrative. The mind doesn't wait for facts, it rushes to interpretation. And interpretation, when left undisciplined, becomes the silent architect of anxiety. You don't suffer because something happens. You suffer because of the meaning you assign to it. That meaning feels automatic, but it is. It's habitual, and habits can be retrained. The Stoics didn't ask you to suppress emotion or deny reality. They asked you to interrupt the reflex. Epictetus put it bluntly: men are disturbed not by things but by the views which they take of them. Notice the precision there. Not emotions, views, interpretations, frames. The story you tell yourself in the split second after perception arrives. That is where sanity is either protected or surrendered. Most people never examine that moment. They live downstream of it. A thought appears, emotion follows, behavior erupts, and then they wonder why they feel exhausted. Stoicism invites you upstream, to the source, to the moment where perception is still malleable. This is where mastery begins. Not control of events, but command over interpretation. You train yourself to see before you judge, to pause before you personalize, to observe before you react. This pause is not weakness. It is strength refined. You may resist this at first. The ego prefers immediacy. It wants to label quickly so it can feel oriented. But speed is the enemy of clarity. The Stoic slows the internal process, not the external world. You don't need the world to be quieter. You need your inner commentary to be less frantic. Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That suffering is perceptual inflation. You take a neutral event and magnify it with prediction, memory, and fear. You project outcomes. You rehearse losses. You stack assumptions until the mind feels under siege. None of this is inevitable. It's learned. And what is learned can be unlearned. Perceptual mastery doesn't mean seeing everything positively. That's shallow optimism, not stoicism. It means seeing accurately, cleanly, without unnecessary additives. You stop adding "this shouldn't be happening," "this means something about me," or "this will ruin everything." Those are interpretations, not facts. And facts, when left alone, are surprisingly manageable. This is where inner peace quietly takes shape, not as a dramatic breakthrough, but as a steady reduction in internal noise. You begin to feel less pulled, less provoked, less hijacked by every stimulus. You don't become indifferent, you become selective. There's a profound freedom in realizing that you don't have to attend every thought that knocks. You don't have to believe the first story your mind tells you. You can say, internally, "This is an impression, not a verdict." That single distinction can change the entire emotional trajectory of your day. Here's a practical exercise to build this skill. Several times a day, silently label your perceptions, not the event, your interpretation of it. Use a simple phrase in your mind: "This is my judgment." Not "this is bad," not "this is unfair," but "this is my judgment." You're creating distance without denial. You're reminding yourself that perception is active, not passive. Another exercise: practice the Stoic pause. When a strong emotion arises, do nothing for a few breaths. No mental arguing, no suppression, just stillness. Let the initial surge pass. What remains is usually smaller, clearer, and far more workable. You're training your nervous system to understand that urgency is often a false signal. You can also rehearse this mentally at the start of the day. Did this repeatedly. He prepared himself not by predicting success, but by anticipating disturbance without drama. You remind yourself that impressions will arise and you will meet them with composure. This is not pessimism, it's readiness. As you practice, you'll notice something subtle. Events don't change much. You do. Your internal responses soften. Your reactions become less explosive. You start feeling grounded even when circumstances are unstable. That's not detachment from life. It's engagement without entanglement. Sanity, then, is not a personality trait. It's a discipline. It's the ongoing practice of refusing to let your peace be negotiated by unexamined perceptions. You stop outsourcing your emotional state to randomness. You reclaim authorship. The Stoics never promised comfort. They promised clarity. And clarity, when sustained, becomes calm. Not the fragile calm that shatters under pressure, but the deep calm that comes from knowing you can meet whatever arises without losing yourself in it. This is the work. It's quiet, it's internal, and it changes everything. When you master perception, inner peace stops being a goal you chase and becomes a condition you inhabit. Number 8. Calm presence in chaos. Sanity is not something you find when life becomes quiet. It's something you carry when life refuses to be. Most people believe calm is the result of order, when things line up, when problems disappear, when noise fades. The Stoics knew better. Calm is not a reaction. It is a position. It is something you stand in while everything else moves. And the ability to remain calmly present in chaos is not a personality trait. It is a practice discipline. You feel chaos not because the world is unstable, but because your attention is. Events rush forward, thoughts multiply, emotions demand verdicts. The mind wants resolution immediately. It wants certainty now. But Stoicism teaches you to slow the inner tempo even when the outer tempo accelerates. As wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Calm presence begins the moment you stop trying to control the storm and start governing your response. Most people panic internally long before anything truly collapses. The body tightens, the breath shortens. The mind leaps ahead, rehearsing consequences that have not arrived. Chaos, in that sense, is often imagined before it is experienced. Calm presence interrupts that chain. It keeps you rooted in what is actually happening, not what might happen. You stop feeding momentum to fear. You stop lending energy to noise. This is not suppression, it is clarity. Calm presence does not mean you feel nothing. It means you feel without being dragged. The Stoics never asked you to become numb. They asked you to become steady. Epictetus put it plainly: first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. When chaos enters, you decide who you are before you decide what to do. That identity, composed, grounded, unhurried, becomes your anchor. Notice how chaos demands urgency. It pressures you to react quickly, speak loudly, decide immediately. Calm presence refuses that demand. It introduces a pause. That pause is not weakness, it is leverage. In the space between stimulus and response, sanity lives. When you rush, you surrender that space. When you pause, you reclaim it. You train this by shifting your focus from outcomes to posture. Not posture of the body alone, but posture of the mind. Ask yourself, not aloud but internally, what does stability look like right now? Not success, not victory, stability. That question reorients you. It turns chaos into a test of composure rather than a threat to survival. Seneca warned about the danger of mental agitation long before modern distractions existed. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Chaos enslaves the untrained mind because it dictates emotional movement. Calm presence is self-mastery in motion. It is choosing not to be yanked by every surge of intensity. One of the most powerful habits you can build is breath discipline, not as relaxation theater but as control training. When chaos rises, lengthen the exhale. Do it deliberately. Longer out-breaths signal safety to the nervous system. You're not calming the situation. You're calming the signal your body sends to your mind. Practice this when nothing is wrong so it's available when everything feels urgent. Another practice is attention narrowing. Chaos feels overwhelming because attention scatters. Bring it back to one physical sensation: your feet on the ground, the weight of your body, the temperature of the air. This anchors you in the present moment, where most chaos loses its teeth. The present is almost always survivable. It's the imagined future that overwhelms. You also train calm presence by abandoning the need to narrate everything internally. The running commentary, judgments, predictions, self-criticism adds volume to chaos. Practice silence inside. Let thoughts pass without commentary. You don't need to answer every mental question. You don't need to resolve every uncertainty. Sanity grows in the gaps you allow. There is a quiet confidence that emerges when you live this way. People feel it before they understand it. Calm presence communicates safety, authority, and trust without a single word. It says, "Nothing here can knock me off center." And that message, once embodied, reshapes how chaos interacts with you. You become less reactive, less combustible, more deliberate. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes manageable. You stop stacking problems on top of problems. You handle one moment at a time fully without dragging the emotional weight of the next 10 moments into the present. That is Stoic sanity, precision of attention, economy of emotion. Here is a practical mental exercise. When chaos appears, silently label only what is factual. Strip away interpretation. Not what it means, not what it could lead to, only what is. This clears emotional static. It prevents escalation. You are training the mind to see clearly under pressure. Another exercise, rehearse calm in advance. In quiet moments, visualize yourself remaining composed while intensity swirls around you, not fighting it, not fleeing it, standing steady. This mental rehearsal strengthens neural pathways. When real pressure arrives, your mind recognizes the posture. The deeper truth is this: chaos is not an enemy. It is a proving ground. It reveals whether you are governed internally or externally, whether your peace is conditional or principled. Calm presence is not passive endurance. It is active command of your inner state. Reminded himself daily, do not let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. You already have what you need. The task is to use it deliberately. Start today, not tomorrow. Practice slowing your inner pace. Practice choosing steadiness over speed. Practice holding your ground emotionally when everything urges you to move. This is not about becoming unshakable in theory. It's about becoming unmovable in practice. Calm presence in chaos is not serenity achieved after struggle. It is sanity expressed during it. And once you learn to stand there, clear-eyed, grounded, composed, you realize something quietly liberating. The world does not need to become calmer for you to remain sane. You do. Number 9, boundaries as protection, not punishment. Most people misunderstand boundaries because they confuse them with ultimatums. They think boundaries are walls built out of anger, tools of withdrawal, or silent punishments meant to teach others a lesson. But that misunderstanding is exactly why so many people feel drained, resentful, and quietly unstable. Stoicism offers a calmer truth. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about protecting your inner order. They are not a reaction. They are a discipline. You don't create boundaries because someone deserves them. You create boundaries because your mind deserves peace, because your attention is finite, because your energy leaks when you leave every door open. A boundary is not a statement of hostility. It is a declaration of self-respect. And once you grasp this distinction, sanity stops feeling fragile and starts feeling cultivated. Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Boundaries are one of the most practical expressions of that power. They are how you decide what enters your mental space and what does not. Without boundaries, your mind becomes a public square. With them, it becomes a sanctuary. Notice how often you override your own limits just to avoid discomfort. You tolerate conversations that drain you. You accept obligations that quietly corrode your focus. You explain yourself too much. You compromise when your intuition is clearly signaling no. Each time you do this, you teach yourself that your inner state is negotiable. And once your mind learns that lesson, anxiety follows naturally. Boundaries reverse that lesson. They tell your nervous system, I am paying attention. They restore trust between you and yourself, and that trust is the foundation of emotional stability. Without it, no amount of reasoning will calm you. With it, even chaos becomes manageable. Epictetus was blunt about this. If you want to be invincible, make sure that no one can hurt you by their opinion. A boundary is not about silencing others. It's about refusing to internalize what is not yours to carry. Other people's expectations, moods, projections, and disappointments are not moral obligations. They are external impressions. Stoicism teaches you to meet impressions with judgment, not reflex. This is where many people struggle. You may feel guilty for drawing lines. You may fear being seen as cold, selfish, or distant. But guilt often appears when you stop abandoning yourself. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something unfamiliar. A boundary says, this is where I end. Not aggressively, not defensively, calmly. And calm is important. Seneca wrote, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Boundaries function best when they are set without emotional heat. When they are not fueled by resentment, they don't feel like punishment. They feel like clarity. Punishment seeks to cause pain. Protection seeks to prevent harm. That difference matters. When your boundary is protective, it doesn't require justification. You don't argue it into existence. You live it. You act consistently. Over time, people adjust, not because you demanded it, but because you became predictable. Predictability is underrated. It creates psychological safety, not just for others, but for you. When you know where you stand, your mind relaxes. You stop scanning for threats. You stop rehearsing explanations. You stop negotiating with yourself. Here's a habit worth building. Before you respond to a request, a message, or a demand, pause and ask, does this cost me more than it gives? Not in terms of favors or fairness, but in terms of inner stability. If the cost is your peace, the answer is already clear. You don't need anger to justify a no. You need honesty. Another exercise is internal rehearsal. Imagine enforcing a boundary calmly without defensiveness. No long explanations, no emotional charge, just a steady presence. This mental practice trains your nervous system to associate boundaries with calm instead of conflict. Over time, the fear dissolves. The Stoics believed sanity was not the absence of problems, but the presence of order. Your mind cannot be ordered if it is constantly reacting. Boundaries reduce reaction. They turn chaos into choice. They allow you to respond instead of absorb. Epictetus warned, "He who laughs at himself never runs out of things to laugh at." There's humility in boundaries too. You stop pretending you can handle everything. You stop overestimating your capacity. You accept your limits without shame. That acceptance is not weakness. It is precision. You may notice resistance at first, internal resistance, the urge to explain yourself, to soften the line, to reopen the door just a little. That urge is old conditioning. Let it pass. You don't need to convince anyone that your boundary is reasonable. Reasonableness is not a requirement for self-respect. A powerful practice is this. When you feel your boundary being tested internally, say silently, "I am allowed to protect my clarity." Repeat it until it feels neutral, not defensive. Neutral. Neutrality is strength. Boundaries also sharpen your focus. When fewer things enter your mental space, what remains gains depth. You become more deliberate, less scattered, more intentional. That's not just emotional hygiene, that's philosophical discipline. Wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Boundaries choose the dye. They determine what repeatedly enters your mind. Without them, your thoughts are colored by noise. With them, they are shaped by values. This is where sanity stabilizes. Not because life becomes easy, but because your inner world becomes governed. You stop living as if everything is urgent. You stop confusing availability with virtue. You stop equating endurance with nobility. Take this seriously. Build boundaries not as reactions, but as rituals. Decide in advance what you will and won't tolerate mentally. Decide how much access others have to your time, attention, and emotional bandwidth. Decide once, so you don't have to decide every time. The Stoic key to sanity is not withdrawal from the world. It is engagement on your own terms. Boundaries are the architecture of those terms. They protect your inner order so you can show up without losing yourself. And when you live this way, something quiet but profound happens. You become calmer without becoming distant, stronger without becoming rigid, present without being depleted. That is not punishment. That is protection. And that protection is what allows sanity to last. Number 10, daily self-reflection as mental hygiene. Sanity is not something you stumble into by accident. It's something you maintain, something you clean, tend to, and restore daily. The Stoics understood this long before modern language tried to medicalize the mind. They treated the inner world the way a disciplined person treats the body. If you don't wash it, it decays. If you don't examine it, it rots quietly. Daily self-reflection in Stoic terms is mental hygiene, not self-criticism, not overthinking, hygiene. a practice that keeps the mind from becoming infected with unexamined impulses, borrowed beliefs, and emotional residue you didn't choose. Most people wait until they feel overwhelmed before they look inward. By then, the mind is cluttered, noisy, reactive. You don't need more stimulation or distraction at that point. You need cleaning. Reflection is not about judging yourself harshly. It's about restoring clarity. Wrote, "People seek retreats for themselves, but nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Notice the implication. The mind can be a refuge or a battlefield. The difference is whether you've learned to return to it deliberately. Without daily reflection, your mind becomes a dumping ground. Opinions pile up. Emotional reactions linger. Frustrations harden into identity. You start reacting on autopilot, mistaking habit for personality. Reflection interrupts that cycle. It forces a pause, a moment where you separate what happened from what you added to it. The Stoics didn't ask, "How do I feel?" first. They asked, "What did I do well? What did I do poorly? What did I fail to do?" Not to shame themselves, but to recalibrate. Seneca was blunt about this. He wrote, "Each day I plead my case at the court of self-examination." That's not poetic indulgence. That's discipline, a daily audit of the mind, not dramatic, not emotional, just honest. You don't wait for your room to smell before you clean it. You don't wait for your teeth to ache before you brush them. And yet most people wait for mental pain before they reflect. That delay is costly. Reflection keeps small errors small. It prevents emotional debt from compounding. When you don't review your reactions, they repeat. When you don't examine your thoughts, they solidify. You begin to believe everything your mind produces. The Stoics warned against this. Epictetus reminded his students, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Reflection exposes those estimates. It pulls them into the light where they lose their power. You might resist this practice because it feels uncomfortable. That's a sign you need it. Hygiene is rarely glamorous. It's repetitive, quiet, uncelebrated, but it works. Reflection is not about finding answers. It's about removing distortion. When you sit with your day and ask yourself what was within your control and what wasn't, something shifts. You stop carrying what was never yours to hold. This habit also restores proportion. Without reflection, one irritation can poison an entire day. One mistake can become a story about who you are. Reflection breaks that illusion. It shrinks events back to their actual size. You stop dramatizing. You stop spiraling. You return to center. That's sanity. Here's a practical exercise the Stoics used, and you can start tonight. Before sleep, replay the day in reverse, not to relive it emotionally, but to observe it calmly. Ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I act in alignment with my values? Where did I allow impulse to lead? Where can I respond better tomorrow? Don't explain. Don't justify, just note. You are training awareness, not writing a defense. Another exercise is morning preparation. Before the day begins, remind yourself that you will encounter irritation, resistance, and unpredictability. Practice this daily. He wrote about preparing the mind for human behavior as it is, not as he wished it to be. This isn't pessimism, it's insulation. When you expect friction, it doesn't shock you. When you expect difficulty, you don't take it personally. Reflection before the day strengthens you. Reflection after the day cleans you. You'll notice something important if you commit to this practice. Your reactions slow down. The gap between stimulus and response widens. In that gap lives freedom. Sanity is not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of choice. Daily reflection builds that choice like a muscle. Many people confuse reflection with rumination. They are opposites. Rumination traps you inside emotion. Reflection steps outside it. Rumination asks, "Why did this happen to me?" Reflection asks, "What part of this was mine?" One weakens you. The other sharpens you. This is also how you reclaim agency. Without reflection, life feels like something that happens to you. With it, life becomes something you participate in consciously. You stop outsourcing responsibility to circumstance. You stop blaming moods, people, or timing. You begin adjusting yourself instead of demanding the world change. The Stoics didn't believe in perfection. They believed in progress. Reflection turns progress into a daily process instead of a vague intention. You don't need hours. You need consistency. 5 focused minutes done daily will outperform 1 intense session done occasionally. Hygiene works because it's regular. There's also a quiet confidence that grows from this. When you know you will review yourself later, you act differently now. You speak more deliberately. You choose more carefully, not out of fear, but out of respect for your own standards. You become accountable to yourself, not to applause or approval. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Self-mastery doesn't begin with control. It begins with awareness. Reflection is how you see yourself clearly without flinching. That clarity is stabilizing. It grounds you. If you want sanity in a noisy world, you don't need to escape it. You need to clean your inner space daily. Make reflection non-negotiable. Treat it like brushing your teeth. Miss it once and you feel off. Miss it repeatedly and decay sets in. Start tonight, not tomorrow, not when life slows down. Sit quietly, review the day, adjust the aim, then rest. Over time, you'll notice that your mind feels lighter, steadier, less reactive. Not because the world improved, but because you did. That is the Stoic key to sanity. Not control of everything, control of attention. Maintained daily, cleaned daily, chosen daily. If you've stayed with me until now, understand this. Sanity is not something the world gives you. It's something you claim. The Stoics never promised an easy life. They promised a steady mind in the middle of chaos. And that is the real advantage you now hold. The noise will not stop. People will still provoke you. Life will still test you. But from this moment forward, you know the difference between what is within your control and what is not. You know that peace is built through discipline, not escape. Through clarity, not denial. Through self-command, not emotional indulgence. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you reclaim a piece of your sanity. Every time you choose reason over impulse, you sharpen your edge. This is not weakness. This is strength refined. So take what you've learned here and apply it today, not someday. Let this philosophy guide how you think, how you speak, and how you respond when pressure rises. If this video brought you clarity, stay on this path. Subscribe, reflect, and return. Because the Stoic key to sanity isn't just understanding, it's practice. And the more you practice, the calmer, stronger, and more unshakable you become. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. What if I told you that the reason people don't value you isn't because you give too little, but because you give too much of the wrong thing? What if the moment you stop chasing approval, explaining yourself, or proving your worth, people suddenly feel uneasy at the thought of losing you? You've seen it happen. The moment you pull back, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in calm self-control, something shifts. Attention sharpens, respect rises, and suddenly your absence feels heavier than your presence ever did. This isn't manipulation. It's not games. It's not pretending to be cold. It's a Stoic principle so subtle that most people miss it entirely, yet so powerful that it rewires how others perceive your value. When you master this, people don't fear losing you because you threaten them. They fear losing you because you no longer need them. In this video, you'll learn the Stoic trick that silently changes the balance of power in any relationship, without force, without drama, without saying a word. Watch until the very end, because the final insight is what turns this from a concept into a personal advantage you can apply immediately. Miss it, and you miss the point. Number 1, you stop chasing outcomes and let attachment fall away. When you stop chasing outcomes and let attachment fall away, something profound happens inside you, and others feel it before they can explain it. This is the Stoic trick most people never see coming. Not because it's hidden, but because it looks so quiet, so ordinary that it gets overlooked. You stop leaning forward. You stop gripping the future with anxious hands. You stop needing a particular result to feel steady. And paradoxically, that's when your presence becomes harder to replace. As Epictetus put it with brutal clarity, if you want to be invincible, make yourself independent of what is not your own. Independence from outcomes is invincibility in disguise. Most people don't realize how loudly attachment speaks. It shows up in urgency, in subtle pressure, in the need for reassurance, in the invisible tension of "I hope this works out." You may think no one notices, but they do. Humans are remarkably sensitive to emotional weight. When you attach yourself to outcomes, you place that weight on others, on situations, on timing, and weight creates resistance. The Stoic path invites you to do the opposite, to place your weight back onto yourself, to care deeply about your conduct, your values, your choices, while releasing your grip on how things unfold. This doesn't mean you stop caring. Stoicism was never about apathy, it's about precision. You care about what is yours to govern, and you release what never truly belonged to you. Reminded himself, you always own the option of having no opinion. Extend that idea further. You always own the option of not clinging, of not begging the future to behave, of not tying your self-worth to a particular ending. When you internalize this, your energy changes. It slows, it deepens, it steadies. Attachment is sneaky because it disguises itself as effort. You tell yourself you're just being invested, just being committed, just being proactive. But underneath, there's often fear. Fear of loss, fear of uncertainty, fear of not being enough unless the outcome validates you. The Stoic response is not to argue with fear, but to see through it. To realize that no external result can grant you the stability you're refusing to give yourself. Once you see that, chasing begins to feel unnecessary, even exhausting. Letting attachment fall away doesn't happen through force. It happens through repeated recognition. Each time you notice yourself mentally rehearsing outcomes, gently pull your attention back to the present moment, to your posture, your breath, your intention. Ask yourself a simple Stoic question. What is mine to do right now? Not tomorrow, not later, now. This question cuts through illusion. It anchors you in agency, and agency dissolves desperation. There's a reason people feel uneasy around those who are overly attached. Attachment broadcasts dependence. Detachment, when rooted in self-command, broadcasts abundance. When you stop chasing outcomes, you stop signaling need. You stop rushing time. You stop bargaining with reality. And without trying to manipulate anything, you become someone whose absence would be felt, not because you demanded importance, but because you never begged for it. Seneca wrote, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Apply this not just to hardship, but to disappointment. When you loosen your attachment to outcomes, you preemptively disarm disappointment. You stop fearing it. And when you no longer fear loss, others sense that you are not easily controlled by the possibility of it. This is where the quiet shift happens. You're no longer someone trying to secure a result. You're someone choosing how to show up regardless of the result. A powerful exercise here is outcome fasting. For a set period, one day, then a week, practice doing your best without mentally checking the scoreboard. No replaying, no projecting, no emotional forecasting. Each time your mind drifts toward "how will this turn out?" bring it back to "how am I acting right now?" This trains you to separate effort from expectation. Over time, you'll notice a surprising relief, as if a background noise you didn't realize was there has gone silent. Another practice is voluntary uncertainty. Instead of rushing to resolve ambiguity, sit with it. Let unanswered questions remain unanswered. Let space exist. This is uncomfortable at first because the mind craves closure, but this discomfort is training. You're teaching yourself that uncertainty is survivable, even workable. When you no longer scramble to close every loop, you radiate composure, and composure is magnetic. There's also a deeper layer to this Stoic trick. When you stop chasing outcomes, you reclaim time. Mental time, emotional time. You're no longer living ahead of yourself. You're here, fully. And presence, real presence, is rare. People are drawn to it instinctively. They sense when someone is not trying to extract something from the moment. When you're not attached to a specific result, your interactions feel lighter, cleaner, less transactional. That's when others begin to lean in, not because you're chasing, but because you're not. This doesn't mean you withdraw or become passive. You still act, you still choose, you still pursue what aligns with your values. The difference is internal. You act without clutching. You pursue without pleading. You move forward without dragging your self-worth behind you like a fragile package. This is Stoic strength. Quiet, unobtrusive, unshakable. End each day with a brief Stoic review. Ask yourself where you attached today, where you tried to control what wasn't yours, where you tied your mood to an outcome instead of your conduct. Then, without guilt, release it. Imagine placing that attachment down. You don't need to carry it into tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough of its own work. As this habit deepens, something counterintuitive happens. The less you chase outcomes, the more grounded you feel. The more grounded you feel, the less replaceable your presence becomes. Not because you're withholding, not because you're strategizing, but because you've become self-contained. And self-contained people are rare. So practice letting go daily, deliberately, quietly. Trust that what is meant to stay will not require desperation, and what requires desperation was never yours to hold. Stand firm in your effort. Detach from the ending, and watch how, without force or fear, your calm independence changes the way others experience you. Number 2, you remain emotionally composed when others expect reaction. When you remain emotionally composed at the exact moment others expect a reaction, something quiet but powerful shifts in the dynamic. You can feel it even if nothing is said. The air changes. The other person pauses. Their certainty weakens, not because you dominated the situation, but because you didn't give them what they assumed they could extract from you. This is one of the most underrated Stoic skills, and it has very little to do with manipulation and everything to do with self-command. As Epictetus put it, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. When you refuse to immediately perform those judgments out loud, through anger, defensiveness, or urgency, you reclaim control over the moment. Most people are trained without realizing it to react on cue. A stimulus appears and the response is almost automatic. Tension demands explanation. Discomfort demands reassurance. Provocation demands a counterstrike. When you break that pattern, you step out of predictability. You stop being emotionally accessible in the way most people are. And unpredictability, when paired with calm, creates psychological weight. People don't fear loud reactions. They fear silence that is chosen. Stoicism never asked you to suppress emotion. It asked you to contain it, to hold it long enough for reason to step in. Reminded himself daily, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. That sentence alone is a training manual. When others expect you to react, they are unconsciously testing whether they can move you. When you don't give them that movement, they sense that their influence has limits. And people instinctively respect, sometimes even fear, limits they cannot cross. Emotional composure signals abundance. It tells the world you are not desperate for resolution, approval, or control. You are not scrambling to correct perceptions. You are not rushing to reassert your value. This is why composure often makes people fear losing you. Not because you threaten to leave, but because you don't cling. You don't beg moments to go your way. You allow things to reveal themselves. That detachment is not coldness, it's self-trust. Reactions are currency. When you spend them too freely, their value drops. When you spend them selectively, people pay attention. The Stoics understood that reacting emotionally hands power outward. Remaining composed keeps power inward. Seneca warned, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Delay is not weakness. Delay is strategy. Delay allows you to choose the version of yourself that enters the moment. And that version, when calm, is rarely challenged twice. Here's the part that matters most. Composure is not passive. It is active restraint. It is strength under control. You are not frozen. You are watching. You are deciding. You are letting the other person reveal more than they intended while you reveal less than expected. This imbalance creates leverage without effort. Silence becomes space. Calm becomes contrast. And contrast makes your presence memorable. To build this habit, you must train your nervous system, not just your thoughts. Start with the pause practice. The moment you feel the urge to react, tightness, heat, urgency, commit to doing nothing for 3 full breaths, not preparing a response, not rehearsing a comeback, just breathing. This interrupts the automatic loop. Over time, your body learns that urgency does not equal danger. That lesson alone will change how you carry yourself. Next, adopt the internal script the Stoics used. This is an impression, not a command. Say it silently, again and again. Every emotional surge is an impression asking for your agreement. You are allowed to decline. When you stop granting automatic agreement, you stop being emotionally predictable. And predictability is what makes people feel safe enough to push. Another exercise is reaction fasting. Choose a set period, an hour, an afternoon, where you respond to nothing emotionally unless absolutely necessary. No internal commentary, no expressive reaction, just observation. This sharpens awareness. You begin to see how often reactions are unnecessary noise. When you later choose to react, it carries weight because it's rare. End each day with a Stoic review. Ask yourself where composure held and where it cracked, not with shame, with precision. The Stoics believed progress came from honest self-audit. Where you lost composure is not failure, it's data. Where you maintained it is proof of growth. Track patterns, not perfection. As this habit strengthens, something unexpected happens. You stop needing emotional outcomes to feel stable. You become less invested in forcing understanding, agreement, or validation. That independence is palpable. People feel it before they understand it. And when they sense that you are not emotionally tethered to their reactions, they begin to tread more carefully. Not because you intimidate them, but because they cannot control you. This is the Stoic trick. You don't threaten absence. You embody self-possession. You don't demand respect. You remove access to emotional leverage. And in that removal, others begin to sense what they could lose, not your attention, but your availability on their terms. Practice this quietly. Train it daily. Let composure become your default, not your performance. Over time, you won't need to remind yourself to stay calm. Calm will arrive first. And when it does, you'll notice something subtle but undeniable. People start choosing their words more carefully around you. They hesitate before provoking. They feel the weight of your presence. Not because you reacted, but because you didn't. Number 3, you set boundaries once and never explain them twice. You set boundaries once and you never explain them twice because explanation, when repeated, quietly turns into negotiation. And negotiation is where respect starts to erode. The Stoics understood this with unsettling clarity. Boundaries were not speeches. They were decisions, clean, final, lived, not argued. As Epictetus said, if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. What he meant was this: the moment you stop defending your limits, you stop handing your power to other people's opinions. Most people lose leverage not because their boundaries are unreasonable, but because they keep justifying them. They explain their standards, soften their tone, add context, offer reassurance, and then do it again when pressure returns. Each explanation sends an unspoken signal. This boundary is flexible if you push hard enough. Stoicism teaches you the opposite. A boundary stated once, calmly and without emotional charge, is enough. Anything more is noise. And silence, when it's intentional, is far more intimidating than words. When you stop explaining yourself, something fascinating happens. People feel the weight of finality, not hostility, not aggression, certainty. Wrote, "Let your actions be guided by reason, not disturbed by the opinions of others." A boundary backed by reason doesn't need defense. It stands on its own. You don't argue with gravity. You don't negotiate with the tide. You adapt. Others do the same when they sense that your standards are immovable. Fear of losing you doesn't come from drama or manipulation. It comes from scarcity of access. When people realize they don't get unlimited chances, unlimited explanations, or unlimited tolerance, they recalibrate. Your value rises not because you threaten to leave, but because you've made it clear, through behavior, that you are willing to walk away from anything that costs you self-respect. And self-respect, once visible, is magnetic. Stoicism never encouraged cruelty or coldness. It encouraged clarity. You are not punishing anyone by holding a boundary. You are simply refusing to abandon yourself. Seneca warned, "He who is too busy to care for himself cannot care for others." Every time you over-explain a boundary, you're prioritizing comfort over integrity. And people feel that imbalance, even if they can't articulate it. Here, where the real shift begins. When you decide that your boundaries are statements, not debates, your nervous system relaxes. You stop rehearsing responses. You stop anticipating pushback. You stop trying to control how others react. You say what needs to be said once, and then you let reality handle the rest. This calm detachment is what makes people uneasy, in a good way. They sense that you are not emotionally entangled in their approval. The Stoic trick is not withdrawal, it's restraint. You don't chase compliance. You don't demand understanding. You allow others to choose how they respond. And that freedom is precisely what makes your presence valuable. People fear losing what they can't control. When your boundaries are firm and unembellished, you become uncontrollable in the healthiest sense. To train this, start with boundary compression. Take one boundary you already know you need and reduce it to its simplest form. No backstory, no justification, one sentence. Practice saying it internally until it feels neutral. The goal is not confidence, it's calm. When a boundary feels calm inside you, it lands with authority outside you. Next, practice silence after declaration. This is where most people fail. They rush to fill the gap. They add explanations to relieve tension. Resist that urge. Silence is not awkward, it's instructional. It teaches others that the statement was complete. Sit with that silence. Let it do its work. Another powerful exercise is internal permission. Each morning, remind yourself, I do not owe emotional labor in exchange for self-respect. This reframes boundaries from rejection to alignment. You are not pushing people away. You are filtering who gets access. That distinction changes everything. You'll notice resistance at first, not always externally, but internally. A voice will tell you that you're being harsh, unreasonable, difficult. The Stoics anticipated this discomfort. Growth always challenges the part of you that survived by appeasing, but discomfort is not danger. It's adjustment. Stay with it. Over time, something sharpens in you. Your words become fewer but heavier. Your presence becomes steadier. People listen more carefully because they know you don't repeat yourself. They sense that crossing a line doesn't lead to chaos, it leads to absence. And absence, when earned, is powerful. This is why people fear losing you, not because you threaten, not because you manipulate, but because you are clear, consistent, and unwilling to bargain with your values. You don't raise your voice. You don't plead your case. You simply live by your standards. And those who recognize your worth adjust. Those who don't remove themselves. So set the boundary once. Say it cleanly. Mean it fully. Then return to your life without commentary. Let your consistency teach what your words no longer need to. That is Stoic power, quiet, unapologetic, and unforgettable. Number 4, you walk away calmly the moment respect drops. You walk away calmly the moment respect drops, not because you are cold, dramatic, or easily offended, but because you understand something most people never fully grasp. Self-respect is not negotiable. It is the foundation everything else stands on. The Stoics were uncompromising on this point. As Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, be willing to disappoint, to withdraw, to let go, rather than betray your own standards. The calm walk away is not a tactic. It is a declaration made without words. Most people stay too long when respect begins to erode. They explain, they justify, they negotiate their dignity inch by inch, hoping things will improve if they just try harder. Stoicism teaches the opposite. The moment respect drops, the lesson is already complete. Staying after that point trains others how to treat you. Leaving calmly trains them how to remember you. Silence becomes a boundary. Distance becomes a message. And the absence of reaction becomes unsettling to those who expected you to tolerate less than you deserve. Walking away calmly is powerful because it contains no bitterness, no slammed doors, no speeches, no need to be understood. Wrote, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When respect drops, the enemy is not the other person. It is the temptation to abandon your values in order to maintain connection. The Stoic refuses that trade. You do not leave to punish. You leave to preserve alignment with yourself. What creates fear of losing you is not manipulation or scarcity games. It is consistency. When people realize that your presence depends on mutual respect, and that this rule is applied quietly, instantly, and without exception, they sense the weight of your standards. You are no longer someone who can be tested endlessly. You are someone whose absence becomes costly, not because you threaten to leave, but because you already have. This calm departure works because it removes leverage. There is nothing to argue against, no emotional hook to grab, no opening to renegotiate terms. You are not angry, you are not pleading. You are simply unavailable for dynamics that require self-betrayal. That composure is what unsettles people. Seneca observed, "He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." To walk away calmly is a small rehearsal of this principle. You demonstrate that you are not enslaved by approval, attachment, or fear of loss. Notice how this shifts your internal world. You stop scanning for signs of validation. You stop calculating how much disrespect you should tolerate to keep peace. You stop performing emotional labor for those who have already lowered the standard. Instead, you anchor yourself to something non-negotiable, your own worth. And when you operate from that place, people feel it immediately. They may not articulate it, but they sense that access to you is conditional, not on their status or charm, but on their behavior. The Stoic understands that respect is not restored through confrontation when it has already dropped below a certain line. Past that point, words lose power. Action becomes the only language left. Calm withdrawal communicates clarity. It says, "I know who I am and I know what I allow." That clarity creates a vacuum. And human psychology does not like vacuums. People fill them with reflection, regret, or renewed effort, not because you asked for it, but because your absence forces awareness. To embody this habit, you must train yourself internally before it ever shows externally. Begin with a respect inventory. Write down privately what behaviors signal respect to you and what behaviors signal erosion. Be precise. Vagueness leads to self-betrayal. The exercise is not about control, it's about clarity. When your standards are clear to you, your actions become effortless. Next, practice emotional non-attachment. This does not mean detachment from values, but detachment from outcomes. Repeat this Stoic reminder daily. I do not control how others act. I only control what I accept. Sit with that idea until it feels natural. The calmer you are with uncertainty, the easier it becomes to walk away without drama. Another exercise is silent rehearsal. Imagine moments where respect dips, not to relive them emotionally, but to rehearse composure. Visualize yourself choosing calm withdrawal rather than explanation. This conditions your nervous system. When the moment arrives, your body already knows what to do. The Stoics believed in mentally preparing for difficulty so it loses its shock. Also train your language by using less of it. Reduce over-explaining in everyday life. Speak when clarity is needed, not when anxiety demands reassurance. The less you rely on words to defend your worth, the more your presence carries it naturally. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is not weakness. It is control. Over time, this habit reshapes how people relate to you. They sense that you do not linger where you are undervalued, that you do not beg for fairness, that you do not cling when the ground shifts. This creates a quiet tension, not fear rooted in insecurity, but respect rooted in consequence. Losing access to you means losing stability, calm, and integrity, and that loss registers deeply. Most importantly, this habit reshapes how you relate to yourself. You stop seeing walking away as failure. You see it as fidelity to your character. You realize that staying where respect has dropped costs more than leaving ever will. And once you internalize that truth, you move differently. You stand taller. You speak less. You choose more carefully. And without trying to intimidate or impress, you become someone whose presence is valued and whose absence is felt. Practice this quietly. Apply it consistently. Do not announce it. Let it become instinct. Because the real Stoic trick is not making people fear losing you. It's reaching a point where you are completely at peace with leaving anything that requires you to abandon yourself. That peace is unmistakable, and it commands more power than any demand ever could. Number 5, you become comfortable with silence and pauses. Comfort with silence and pauses is one of the most underestimated Stoic advantages you can develop, and once you truly embody it, the entire dynamic of how people experience you begins to shift. Silence stops being awkward, pauses stop being empty. They become charged. They create space. And space, when handled with composure, makes people lean in instead of pulling away. This is not a trick of manipulation. It's a byproduct of inner stability. As Epictetus put it, nature has given us one tongue and two ears so that we may hear twice as much as we speak. When you no longer rush to fill every gap with words, you quietly communicate that you are not anxious for approval, not afraid of stillness, and not dependent on constant exchange to feel secure. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with silence. They treat pauses as threats. A gap in conversation feels like exposure, like something must be fixed immediately. So they rush to explain, to justify, to add more, to soften, to overdeliver. This urgency leaks neediness. When you remove that urgency, when you allow silence to exist without flinching, you invert the dynamic. You are no longer chasing connection. You are allowing it to come to you. And that shift is felt immediately, even if no one can explain why. Silence works because it signals self-trust. When you don't rush to speak, you show that your value is not dependent on being constantly heard. You trust your presence enough to let it stand on its own. Reminded himself, let silence be your general rule, say only what is necessary and in few words. This wasn't advice about withdrawal. It was guidance about precision. When you speak less but with intention, your words carry weight. When you pause before responding, your reactions feel chosen rather than automatic. People sense that you are not easily pulled off center. There is also a deeper psychological effect at play. Silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty forces attention. When you don't immediately react, explain, or reassure, the other person is left to fill the space with their own thoughts. They begin to wonder, they reflect, they project, and in that space, your perceived value rises, not because you are withholding, but because you are not overextending. The Stoics understood that power often lies not in action, but in restraint. Seneca captured this clearly when he said, "He who knows how to be silent is the master of himself." To become comfortable with silence, you must first stop treating it as a problem. Silence is not a failure of communication. It is a form of communication. It says, "I am present, I am steady, I am not in a hurry." When you internalize this, pauses stop feeling heavy. They feel natural, grounded, intentional. You begin to realize that not everything needs a response, and not every moment needs to be filled. That realization alone separates you from the majority. Training this skill is subtle but powerful. Start with intentional pauses. When you feel the urge to respond immediately, don't suppress it, delay it. Take a breath. Let the moment settle. Notice how quickly the impulse to speak fades when you don't obey it instantly. This trains your nervous system to tolerate stillness. Over time, stillness becomes familiar rather than threatening. This is not about appearing mysterious. It's about becoming composed. Another exercise is silence exposure. Give yourself periods where you deliberately reduce verbal output, not to withdraw, but to listen more deeply to your thoughts, your body, the rhythm of interaction. You'll notice how much unnecessary speech is driven by discomfort rather than intention. By removing excess words, you begin to speak only when you actually mean something. This naturally increases the impact of what you say. There is also the practice of ending thoughts cleanly. Many people weaken their presence by trailing off, adding disclaimers, or softening their words out of fear of how they'll be received. Instead, practice finishing your sentences and allowing silence to follow. Let your words land. Don't chase validation afterward. This feels uncomfortable at first, but it builds a quiet authority that others instinctively respond to. As you grow more comfortable with pauses, you'll notice a shift inside you. You stop measuring moments by how well you performed verbally. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop feeling the need to manage impressions constantly. This inner quiet is contagious. People feel calmer around you, more attentive, more aware. And paradoxically, they begin to fear losing access to you, not because you threaten absence, but because your presence feels rare. This is where the Stoic trick truly lives. When you are at ease with silence, you no longer signal dependency. You signal abundance of self. You show that you don't need constant stimulation, reassurance, or engagement to feel whole. That independence creates gravity. People are drawn toward what feels self-contained and steady. They respect what doesn't beg to be noticed. Remember, this is not about playing games or withholding warmth. Stoicism never taught coldness. It taught control. Silence, when paired with calm presence, is not distance, it's depth. It gives interactions room to breathe. It allows meaning to surface naturally, and it protects your energy from being scattered. So practice this daily. Pause before responding. Let silence exist without rescuing it. Speak less, but with more intention. Observe how your inner state changes first. That's where the real work happens. And then quietly notice how others respond differently. Not louder, not aggressively, but with attention, with care, with an unspoken awareness that your presence is not guaranteed and therefore not easily replaced. Number 6, you invest deeply in your own purpose, not approval. When you invest deeply in your own purpose instead of chasing approval, something powerful and almost unsettling happens in the social atmosphere around you. People begin to sense that you are not orbiting them. You are not adjusting yourself to be liked, chosen, validated, or kept. You are moving according to an internal compass, and that independence quietly flips the usual dynamic. As wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. The Stoic understands that approval is external, purpose is internal, and only one of those deserves to guide your life. Most people live approval-first lives without realizing it. They listen for reactions more than they listen to their own conscience. They adjust their tone, their pace, even their values based on how they think they're being received. Over time, this creates a subtle dependence. Not dramatic, not obvious, but real. When approval becomes fuel, you start leaking power. You hesitate, you over-explain, you second-guess. And even if people enjoy your presence, they don't fear losing it, because it feels available, adaptable, and eager to stay. Purpose changes that entirely. Purpose anchors you. It gives your days weight and direction independent of who is watching. When you wake up guided by something you respect, not something you hope will be praised, your energy shifts. You speak differently. You move differently. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't scramble to repair impressions. You don't abandon your rhythm just because someone else disapproves. And that's when people begin to feel something unfamiliar, uncertainty about their hold on you. This isn't manipulation, it's alignment. The Stoics were clear that a life guided by externals will always be fragile. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That line isn't about arrogance, it's about freedom. When you stop shaping yourself to avoid disapproval, you remove other people's leverage. You become harder to pull, harder to sway, harder to predict. And humans instinctively value what doesn't bend easily. Purpose also creates selectivity. When your life has a clear direction, not everything deserves your time, attention, or emotional investment. You stop scattering yourself. You stop explaining your priorities. You stop negotiating your standards. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. And clarity creates contrast. People begin to sense that access to you is not guaranteed by proximity or history or expectation. It's earned by alignment. That realization alone makes your presence feel more valuable. Approval-seeking broadcasts a subtle message. I need this to go well. Purpose-driven behavior broadcasts a different one. I'll act rightly regardless. The first invites testing. The second invites respect. Seneca warned, "He who depends on another for his happiness is a slave." When you depend on approval, you hand over your emotional stability. When you depend on purpose, you keep it. And people feel the difference immediately, even if they can't articulate it. Here's the paradox. When approval is no longer your focus, you often receive more of it, but it no longer controls you. Because you're not chasing it, it stops defining you. And because it stops defining you, others sense that losing you would mean losing someone who cannot be easily replaced. Not because you perform better, but because you are less available to be shaped. To build this Stoic trick into your life, you need daily reinforcement. Start with purpose articulation, not in grand, dramatic language, but in simple, uncompromising terms. Write down what you are committed to becoming, not what you want others to think of you. Focus on principles, not outcomes. Read it daily. This grounds your actions before the world has a chance to vote on them. Next, practice approval fasting. For short periods, deliberately refrain from checking for reactions, internal or imagined. Don't replay conversations. Don't audit expressions. Don't look for confirmation that you were received well. This isn't indifference, it's discipline. The exercise trains your nervous system to find safety internally rather than socially. Over time, you'll notice how much lighter you feel when your self-worth isn't constantly being renegotiated. Another powerful practice is value-first decision-making. Before responding, agreeing, or engaging, ask yourself one quiet question. Is this aligned with my direction? not will this be liked, not will this keep peace, alignment over appeasement. Each time you choose alignment, you strengthen trust in yourself, and self-trust is the foundation of composure. There's also the Stoic practice of negative visualization, not to create fear but to remove dependence. Briefly imagine losing approval entirely, not dramatically, just neutrally. Then notice what remains. Your character remains, your direction remains, your effort remains. This exercise weakens the emotional grip of approval by reminding you that it is optional, not essential. As purpose becomes central, something else happens. You stop clinging. And when you stop clinging, others feel the space. Not distance, but autonomy. You're present without being attached, engaged without being dependent, warm without being needy. That combination is rare, and rarity creates perceived value. People fear losing you not because you threaten absence, but because your presence is no longer guaranteed by their validation. You could stay, you could go, and either way, you remain intact. That's what unsettles and attracts at the same time. This path requires courage. There will be moments where approval would be easier, quicker, softer, but the Stoic understands that ease is not always strength. Strength is coherence, living in alignment with your purpose even when it costs you temporary comfort. Over time, that consistency builds a reputation you don't have to manage. So invest deeply in your principles, in your direction, in the work of becoming someone you respect even when no one is watching. Let approval be a byproduct, not a pursuit. Because the moment people realize you are not anchored to their opinion, they begin to sense something real at stake. And that's when they stop wondering how to keep you impressed and start wondering how not to lose you. Number 7, you respond slowly, never from urgency. Responding slowly, never from urgency, is one of the quietest forms of power you can develop. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't posture. It doesn't threaten. Yet it changes how people experience you at a fundamental level. When you don't rush to reply, don't scramble to reassure, don't react the moment a feeling spikes, you communicate something without words. You are not desperate for outcomes. And nothing makes people more aware of your value than realizing you are not grasping for theirs. Urgency is invisible panic. It leaks through tone, timing, and energy. Even when your words are calm, urgency betrays itself in speed. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus reminded us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, resist the reflex to immediately clarify, explain, or secure your position. When you respond slowly, you allow space to form, and space is where respect grows. When you pause before responding, you reclaim authorship over your inner world. You stop allowing external stimuli to dictate your internal rhythm. Most people live in reaction mode, bouncing from impulse to impulse, mistaking speed for sincerity. You choose a different path. You let the moment breathe. You let emotions settle. You let your response come from clarity instead of pressure. That choice alone reshapes how others perceive you. Calm timing feels intentional. Intentionality feels rare. And rarity creates value. Stoicism never taught indifference, it taught sovereignty. You care, but you don't collapse. You feel, but you don't flinch. You respond, but you don't rush. Wrote, do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. This wasn't a call to hurry. It was a call to presence. Slowness in response is presence refined. It signals that you are here, grounded, and choosing your words because they matter, not because you're afraid of silence. Silence, when chosen, becomes a mirror. Others begin to project into it. They fill the gap with assumptions. They wonder what you're thinking. They sense that you're not easily swayed. This isn't manipulation, it's self-regulation. When you don't rush to respond, you show that your emotional state isn't hostage to the moment. And emotional independence is magnetic. People don't fear losing someone who is frantic to be kept. They fear losing someone who is composed without them. Urgency usually disguises itself as politeness, enthusiasm, or care, but beneath it often lies a need. The need to be understood immediately, validated quickly, secured instantly. The Stoic sees through this. Seneca warned, hurry is the mark of a slave. Not a slave to others, but a slave to inner agitation. When you slow your responses, you free yourself from that agitation. You stop negotiating your worth in real time. This doesn't mean becoming cold or withdrawn. It means becoming deliberate. You allow yourself time to choose the right tone, the right words, or even no words at all. You understand that not every moment requires an answer and not every feeling requires expression. This restraint communicates depth. People sense that your attention is not cheap, that your engagement is earned, not automatic. There is a rhythm to grounded communication. Fast responses come from nervous energy. Slow responses come from self-trust. When you trust yourself, you don't rush to secure outcomes. You know that what's aligned will remain and what isn't doesn't need chasing. This mindset quietly shifts the balance of power, not outwardly, internally. And internal shifts are the ones others feel most strongly. To train this habit, begin with intentional delay, not avoidance. Delay. When you feel the pull to respond immediately, pause for a set number of breaths. Let your body settle before your mind speaks. This teaches your nervous system that silence is safe, that nothing collapses if you don't react instantly. Over time, this becomes natural. Your response is slow not because you're trying, but because you're centered. Another exercise is response review. At the end of the day, reflect on moments where urgency tried to take over, not to criticize yourself, but to observe. Where did speed feel necessary? Where did it feel compulsive? Awareness alone begins the shift. The Stoics believed reflection was a form of sharpening the mind. You don't fix what you don't first see. You can also practice value-based responding. Before replying, ask yourself quietly, am I responding to align with my values or to relieve discomfort? This question cuts through noise. Value-based responses feel steady and clean. Discomfort-based responses feel rushed and heavy. Choose the former, even if it means waiting longer than feels comfortable. As you practice this, something changes in you before it changes in others. You feel less reactive, less pulled, less dependent on immediate outcomes. You begin to experience time differently, slower, fuller, more intentional, and people pick up on this. They sense that you are not operating from fear of loss, that you are not scrambling to hold on, that your presence is chosen, not clung to. This is the Stoic trick that isn't a trick at all. It's discipline, it's patience, it's self-trust. When you respond slowly, never from urgency, you signal abundance without saying it. You communicate that your inner world is stable, and stability is what people don't want to lose. So start now. Let silence work for you. Let time become your ally. Respond when you're ready, not when you're anxious. Over days and weeks, this habit reshapes your energy. You stop chasing connection. You stop fearing distance. And paradoxically, people lean in, not because you demanded attention, but because your calm made it worth holding on to. Number 8, you accept loss as neutral, not threatening. You accept loss as neutral, not threatening, and that single shift quietly rewires the way people experience you. Most people live as if loss is a verdict, something shameful, painful, or destabilizing. They cling, negotiate, and grasp because they believe that losing something means becoming less. Stoicism cuts straight through that illusion. Loss is not a moral failure. It is not an identity wound. It is an event, nothing more, nothing less. When you internalize this, your posture changes. Your voice changes. Your energy changes. And people feel it immediately, even if they don't understand why. The Stoics were relentless about this distinction. What is within your control is your judgment. What is outside it is everything else. Epictetus put it plainly. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Loss only terrifies when you label it as catastrophic. The moment you strip it of that label, it loses its leverage over you. And when something loses leverage over you, it also loses the ability to control your behavior. Most people signal fear without speaking. They signal it through urgency, through tension, through the need to secure outcomes before they slip away. You don't need to announce that you're unafraid of loss. Your calm does that for you. When you accept loss as neutral, you stop bargaining with reality. You stop trying to lock people, situations, or outcomes into permanence. You let things be free. And paradoxically, that freedom is exactly what makes others hesitate to walk away. Stoicism teaches that attachment is not love and fear is not loyalty. When fear of loss governs you, you become predictable. Predictability erodes leverage. The Stoic understands something deeper. The less you fear losing something, the less power it has over your decisions. Seneca warned that he who fears death will never do anything worth of a man who is alive. Replace death with loss and the principle holds. Fear shrinks you. Acceptance expands you. Accepting loss does not mean inviting it. It means you no longer distort yourself to avoid it. You don't rush to preserve what isn't yours to control. You don't dilute your values to keep what is already temporary. You don't trade dignity for reassurance. When people sense that you are willing to let go without collapsing, they experience something unfamiliar, absence of pressure. And pressure, when removed, reveals desire. People fear losing what doesn't need them. This mindset recenters your identity. You stop defining yourself by what stays and start defining yourself by how you stand. Reminded himself, receive without pride, let go without attachment. That sentence is not poetic decoration, it's a discipline. When you can receive without clinging and release without resentment, you become emotionally unmovable, not cold, not distant, grounded. There's a psychological clarity that emerges when loss is neutral. You no longer scramble to control narratives. You don't rush to explain yourself. You don't chase closure. You trust that your character does not evaporate when something exits your life. This quiet trust creates an unspoken boundary. People sense that you are choosing them, not needing them. And choice is magnetic. Need is heavy. To train this, you begin with mental rehearsal. The Stoics practiced not to dwell in pessimism, but to dissolve fear through familiarity. The exercise is simple. Imagine loss calmly, not dramatically, not emotionally, just neutrally. Visualize the absence without catastrophe. Let your mind see that you still stand, that your breath continues, that your values remain intact. This rehearsal removes shock. When shock disappears, fear weakens. Another exercise is value anchoring. Ask yourself repeatedly and honestly, what about me remains even if this is gone? Write it down, read it, sit with it. You'll realize that what matters most, your judgment, discipline, integrity, was never at risk. This realization builds inner stability. Stability is what others feel as strength. Practice deliberate non-attachment in small ways. Notice where you seek certainty, reassurance, or guarantees. Instead of tightening your grip, soften it. Not outwardly, internally. Release the demand that outcomes must unfold a certain way for you to remain whole. This is not passivity. This is sovereignty. You act fully, but you don't hinge your worth on the result. As this habit deepens, something counterintuitive happens. You become more selective, not less. When loss doesn't scare you, you no longer tolerate misalignment just to avoid emptiness. You walk away from what erodes you without inner drama. That calm exit, unannounced, unthreatened, unbitter, is what lingers in people's minds. Silence, when backed by self-respect, is louder than any argument. Understand this clearly. People don't fear losing someone who begs to stay. They fear losing someone who could leave and still be at peace. That peace communicates abundance. It signals that your life is not dependent on any single attachment. And abundance, when authentic, reshapes the balance of power without confrontation. This is not a tactic, it's a posture, a way of standing in the world. You don't adopt it to manipulate outcomes, you adopt it to free yourself. And freedom has side effects. One of them is that people become more careful with you, more attentive, more aware that your presence is a choice, not a guarantee. So train your mind daily to see loss as an event, not a verdict. Release the reflex to panic at the idea of absence. Anchor yourself in what cannot be taken, and let this quiet acceptance reshape how you move, speak, and decide. When you do, you won't need to convince anyone of your value. The calm certainty with which you can let go will make it unmistakable. Number 9, you stay consistent regardless of how others behave. You stay consistent regardless of how others behave, and that single habit quietly rearranges the power dynamic around you. Not because you manipulate, withdraw, or perform detachment as a tactic, but because you refuse to let your inner state be negotiated by external moods. This is one of the most underestimated Stoic strengths. Consistency is not rigidity, it is steadiness. And steadiness unsettles people who are used to emotional leverage. As Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. What he was pointing to is deeper than appearances. When you stop adjusting yourself to win approval or avoid discomfort, you become hard to move. And what cannot be easily moved is always respected, and often feared to lose. Most people unconsciously train others how to treat them by changing their tone, energy, availability, and values in response to external behavior. Praise makes them warmer. Indifference makes them anxious. Disapproval makes them bend. Over time, this creates a pattern. Their consistency depends on how they're treated. The Stoic does the opposite. You decide who you are before anyone else enters the equation. Your values don't fluctuate. Your self-respect doesn't spike or crash. Your presence doesn't inflate or withdraw based on reactions. This predictability of character, ironically, makes you unpredictable emotionally. Others cannot pull your strings because you've stopped handing them the controls. Consistency builds a quiet kind of gravity. When you don't reward bad behavior with emotional reactions or punish good behavior with overinvestment, people begin to sense that your inner balance doesn't orbit them. It stands on its own. Reminded himself, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do. This isn't apathy, it's alignment. You care deeply about your principles, not about maintaining emotional symmetry with others. And that difference is felt immediately. What makes people fear losing you is not distance, it's reliability of self. When your behavior doesn't swing wildly, others can't predict how to control you. They can't trigger closeness through approval or distance through neglect. You don't become colder when tested, nor do you become warmer when validated. You remain the same person, calm, present. That steadiness forces others to confront something uncomfortable. If they want you in their life, they must meet you where you stand, not where they wish to pull you. Stoicism teaches that your role is to govern what is yours and release what is not. Your thoughts, choices, and actions belong to you. Other people's moods do not. Seneca put it plainly, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Much of inconsistency comes from imagined consequences, fear of being disliked, fear of being abandoned, fear of being misunderstood. When you stop letting these fears dictate your behavior, your consistency becomes an anchor. And anchors are not dramatic, but they are impossible to ignore. Here, where this becomes practical, start by defining your non-negotiables, not rules for others, standards for yourself. Decide how you speak, how you respond, how you treat your time and energy. Once defined, practice acting from these standards even when it feels uncomfortable, especially then. Consistency is forged under pressure, not ease. The exercise is simple but demanding. Before responding, ask yourself, is this aligned with who I chose to be, or am I reacting to how I'm being treated? Answer honestly, then act accordingly. Another practice is emotional lag. When something external shifts tone, attention, behavior, do nothing internally for a moment. Let the impulse to adjust pass. This pause trains you to stay rooted. Over time, your nervous system learns that stability is safe. You don't need to chase equilibrium through others. You carry it with you. You should also rehearse internal dialogue. When you feel the urge to change yourself to preserve connection, remind yourself, consistency is not abandonment, it is integrity. You are not withdrawing, you are remaining. This distinction matters. You are present without being pliable, available without being dependent, engaged without being reactive. That balance is rare, and rarity always creates value. People fear losing what they cannot replace, and what cannot be replaced is not perfection, intensity, or constant availability. It's groundedness. When your behavior is steady, others begin to notice their own fluctuations more clearly. Your calm highlights their chaos. Your certainty exposes their indecision. This contrast creates tension, not in you but in them. They sense that you are not easily destabilized. And anything that stands firm in a shifting environment becomes something people don't want to lose. There's also a deeper psychological effect at play. When you remain consistent, you remove the reward-punishment loop that most relationships unconsciously operate on. You don't reinforce behavior with emotional volatility. This forces others to relate to you as an equal, not as a regulator of your mood. Equality is confronting. It demands responsibility, and responsibility is often avoided unless the person is worth it. Your consistency silently asks that question without words. End each day with a short reflection. Where did you stay aligned? Where did you bend? Not to criticize, but to refine. Stoics treated reflection as calibration. Each adjustment brings you closer to coherence, and coherence is what people feel when they say someone has presence. Understand this clearly. Staying consistent does not make you cold. It makes you trustworthy to yourself first, and self-trust radiates outward. When people sense that you won't disappear emotionally, won't overreact, won't reshape yourself to fit the moment, they begin to recognize your value. Not because you threatened absence, but because your presence has weight. So practice this quietly. Stay steady when others shift. Stay aligned when emotions rise. Stay rooted when expectations press. Over time, you'll notice something undeniable. People lean in differently. They speak more carefully. They hesitate before taking you for granted. Not because you demanded importance, but because your consistency made your absence unthinkable. Number 10, you value self-respect more than being chosen. You value self-respect more than being chosen, and that single decision quietly rearranges every power dynamic in your life. The Stoics understood this long before modern language tried to dress it up as confidence or detachment. This is not arrogance, it's alignment. When you refuse to trade your dignity for approval, people feel it immediately, even if they can't explain why. Put it simply, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Self-respect begins there. With an internal line you will not cross, even when crossing it would make you liked, selected, or temporarily validated. Most people are taught subtly, repeatedly, to crave being chosen by others, chosen by circumstances, chosen by opportunity. Over time, that craving turns into quiet self-abandonment. You feel it when you overextend, tolerate what unsettles you, or silence your own standards just to remain desirable. Stoicism cuts through that fog. It reminds you that being chosen means nothing if you had to betray yourself to earn it. And when you internalize that truth, your behavior shifts. You stop negotiating your values. You stop auditioning. You stop shrinking your needs to fit someone else's comfort. That shift alone changes how people relate to you. The paradox is this: the less you need to be chosen, the more valuable your presence becomes. Not because you play games, but because you are no longer available at any cost. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, stop bending yourself to appear acceptable. When you choose self-respect over approval, you accept the risk of not being liked. That risk is the price of freedom, and freedom is magnetic. Fear of losing you doesn't come from manipulation. It comes from clarity. People sense when your presence is optional to you, when staying aligned matters more than staying included. You don't threaten withdrawal. You don't announce boundaries. You simply live by them. That creates contrast. Most people are emotionally available on credit, constantly in hopes of security. When you don't do that, your attention carries weight. Your agreement feels earned. Your absence feels noticeable. Stoicism teaches that attachment to outcomes weakens you. Attachment to character strengthens you. Seneca wrote, "The man who is contented with what he has is richer than the man who wants more." Applied here, it means this: when you are content with your own standards, you stop chasing external selection. You become internally selected, and that inner sufficiency subtly unsettles those who are used to being the judge rather than the evaluated. This doesn't mean indifference, it means discernment. You still care, but you care without desperation. You engage without clinging. You listen without losing yourself. That balance is rare, and rarity creates value. People fear losing what they can't easily replace, and self-respect is not replaceable. Anyone can be agreeable, few can be grounded. To build this habit, start with a daily self-alignment check. Ask yourself one quiet question before responding, agreeing, or committing. Will this cost me respect for myself? Not comfort, not convenience, respect. If the answer feels heavy or constricting, pause. That pause is your protection. You don't need to justify it. Silence is often the most self-respecting response. Next, practice value-first decisions. Choose one value: honesty, composure, fairness, restraint, and let it guide your actions for the day. Not loudly, not internally. Let that value be your compass. When decisions arise, measure them against it. Over time, this trains your nervous system to prioritize integrity over acceptance. You begin to trust yourself more, and when you trust yourself, others sense it. Another exercise is controlled non-chasing. Notice when the impulse to pursue validation arises. Don't shame it, observe it, then consciously choose not to act on it. Let the urge pass. This teaches you that you are not dependent on immediate reassurance. Each time you resist the chase, you reinforce inner stability. Stability reads as strength. At the end of the day, review moments where you honored yourself and moments where you compromised. Not to criticize, but to recalibrate. Stoics believed reflection was mental hygiene. You're not aiming for flawlessness. You're aiming for consistency. And consistency is what builds identity. As you deepen this practice, something changes in your posture toward life. You stop trying to be indispensable. You become irreplaceable by being authentic. You stop asking, "Will they choose me?" and start asking, "Do I choose this?" That reversal is everything. It removes pressure. It restores calm. It makes your presence deliberate instead of needy. People fear losing you when they realize you won't lose yourself to keep them. Not because you threaten departure, but because you are whole without attachment. That wholeness creates contrast in a world full of quiet bargaining. And once felt, it's not easily forgotten. So choose self-respect daily, in small moments, in quiet decisions, in pauses no one sees. Let your standards be steady. Let your boundaries be lived, not announced. And trust the Stoic truth that has survived centuries. When you stand firmly in who you are, without chasing, without pleading, without shrinking, you don't need to make people fear losing you. Your self-respect does that for you. If there's one thing to remember, it's this: the Stoic never tries to be missed. He becomes impossible to replace. When you stop chasing approval, stop over-explaining, stop bending your boundaries just to be liked, something powerful happens. Your presence gains weight. Your absence gains meaning. People begin to sense that losing you would cost them something real. This isn't manipulation. It's mastery. Mastery of your emotions, your standards, your time. And when you live this way, you don't need to demand respect or attention. It comes to you naturally. So take this with you today. Practice restraint. Choose self-respect over reassurance. Let your silence, your discipline, and your consistency speak louder than words ever could. If this message resonated with you, don't stop here. Rewatch this video, apply just one principle today, and watch how the dynamic around you starts to shift. And if you want more Stoic wisdom like this, insights that make you stronger, calmer, and undeniably valuable, make sure you stay with this channel. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. What if I told you that the reason your life feels heavier than it should is because you're weak, unlucky, or behind, but because you've been giving your energy to things you were never meant to control? Think about it. The overthinking at night, the frustration when people don't act the way you expect, the silent pressure to be more, do more, prove more. You wake up already tired, not from effort, but from resistance. Stoicism was never about suppressing emotions or becoming cold. It was about clarity, power, inner stability in a chaotic world. And when practiced daily, even for a few minutes, it quietly rewires the way you respond to stress, rejection, fear, and uncertainty. You stop reacting. You start choosing. And that single shift changes everything. This video isn't motivation you'll forget tomorrow. It's a mental reset, one you can return to every day to strengthen discipline, calm your mind, and reclaim control over your life. But only if you watch it all the way through. Each idea builds on the last, and missing one breaks the chain. So stay with me until the very end, because the version of you who finishes this video won't see life the same way again. Number 1, you control your response, not the event. You don't control what happens, but you absolutely control how you meet it. That single idea, when lived instead of merely understood, rewires your entire relationship with life. Epictetus put it plainly, it is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them. Read that again, slowly. Let it land. The world is going to move the way it moves. People will act the way they act. Circumstances will shift without consulting you. Your power begins at the exact moment you decide what those things mean to you. That's where your freedom lives. Most people give that power away automatically. An event happens and the reaction fires before awareness even shows up. Anger, fear, defensiveness, collapse. Stoicism is the practice of inserting a pause where chaos usually rushes in. That pause is not weakness, it's command. Reminded himself daily, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. That line isn't denial, it's discipline. You don't pretend events didn't happen. You simply refuse to let them decide who you become in the next moment. You train this by noticing the instant you feel pulled, that tightening in your chest, that rush in your thoughts, that urge to react. Instead of following it, you label it. This is an impression, that's straight from Epictetus. An impression is just raw data hitting your senses. It is not truth yet. It becomes truth only if you approve it. And you don't have to approve every thought that knocks. This is where practice begins. Here's something simple but uncomfortable. When emotion rises, slow your body down first. Your breath, your jaw, your shoulders. The body calms the mind faster than arguments ever will. Take one long exhale and remind yourself, I am not required to respond immediately. That sentence alone can save you years of regret. You are allowed to wait. You are allowed to choose. You are allowed to be deliberate in a world addicted to instant reaction. Stoicism isn't about suppressing feeling. It's about refusing to be dragged by it. Seneca wrote, A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. Most suffering comes from imagined futures, replayed pasts, and emotional exaggeration. When you control your response, you shorten suffering at the root. You meet reality as it is, not as your fear paints it. You build this control the same way you build muscle, through repetition. Start your day with a mental rehearsal. Call this anticipating challenges before they arrive. Quietly remind yourself that frustration, delay, disrespect, and inconvenience may appear today. Not to dread them, to be ready. When they show up, instead of surprise, you feel recognition. I expected you. And because you expected them, they don't own you. Another daily exercise is response delay. Practice not responding immediately even when you could. Let the first impulse pass, count to 5. Then decide if a response is necessary at all. Often, silence is the most sovereign reply, not passive silence, intentional silence. Silence that says, I am in control of myself. Epictetus was ruthless about this. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish. Sometimes restraint looks like weakness to the undisciplined. Let them think that. Your goal isn't performance, it's mastery. You'll notice something change as you practice this. Events feel smaller, not because they shrink, but because you expand. You stop living at the mercy of circumstances and start living from principle. Stoicism teaches that the only true good is virtue, your character, your choices, your inner posture. Everything else is external, preferred or not, but never essential. Once that sinks in, the world loses its power to shake you. When you fail, and you will, don't dramatize it. Don't spiral into self-criticism. Observe, adjust, continue. Said, be strict with yourself and tolerant of others. That includes tolerance for your own learning curve. Progress here is quiet, almost invisible, but over time people feel it. Your presence steadies, your reactions soften, your decisions sharpen. Here, another practice. End each day with a brief review. Ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I react without thinking? Where did I pause and choose well? What will I do differently tomorrow? This isn't judgment, it's calibration. Seneca did this nightly. It's how you turn philosophy into behavior. Remember this, controlling your response doesn't mean controlling outcomes. It means controlling integrity. You act in alignment with who you choose to be, regardless of what happens around you. That's real confidence. Quiet, unshakable, earned. Watch this idea every day in your mind. Repeat it when tension rises. Write it down if you need to. I control my response, not the event. Say it until it becomes instinct. Because when life tests you, and it will, this principle will be the difference between being tossed around and standing firm. And once you taste that kind of inner control, you won't want to live any other way. Number 2, discipline is the highest form of self-respect. Discipline is the highest form of self-respect because it's the moment you decide that your future matters more than your comfort. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Every time you choose discipline, you are telling yourself, I am worth the effort. Most people misunderstand this. They think discipline is punishment, restriction, or some harsh denial of pleasure. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Discipline is care. It's structure. It's the quiet agreement you make with yourself to stop abandoning who you could be. Wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Discipline is how you stop arguing and start becoming. When you lack discipline, you slowly erode trust in yourself. You promise, delay, excuse, repeat. Over time, your own words lose weight in your ears. That's not a motivation problem, that's a respect problem. Self-respect is not built through affirmations or confidence tricks. It's built through follow-through. Through doing the thing even when no one is watching, especially then. Epictetus said, first learn the meaning of what you say and then speak. Discipline is learning the meaning of your intentions by acting on them. You don't need extreme routines or dramatic transformations. You need consistency that borders on boring. Discipline thrives in the ordinary. It shows up when you choose order over chaos, clarity over impulse. Each disciplined action is a vote for the person you are becoming. Skip enough votes and the future elects someone else. Someone weaker, someone reactive, someone you don't fully respect. But cast them daily, even in small ways, and something changes inside you. Your posture straightens. Your decisions slow down. You stop negotiating with your lower instincts. Stoicism reminds you that freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is wanting what aligns with reason. Seneca put it plainly, no man is free who is not master of himself. Discipline is mastery without noise. It's you choosing long-term alignment over short-term relief. And here's the truth most people avoid. The pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of self-disrespect compounds. You feel it every time you hesitate, every time you doubt yourself, every time you sense that you're capable of more but keep settling for less. Start treating discipline as a daily signal of self-respect. When you wake up, don't ask how you feel, ask what needs to be done. Feelings will catch up later. This is not coldness, it's leadership. You're leading yourself. Reminded himself each morning, at dawn when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. Not as a motivated human, not as an inspired one, as a responsible one. A powerful exercise is to define one non-negotiable action per day. 1. No matter what your mood says, write it down, commit to it, then execute it without drama. This builds internal authority. Another exercise is evening review. Before sleep, ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I act with discipline today? Where did I avoid it? What will I correct tomorrow? Do this calmly without self-attack. Stoicism is about honesty, not cruelty. Discipline also simplifies your mind. When your standards are clear, decisions become easier. You stop wasting energy on inner debates. You already know the answer. That clarity creates peace. And peace is not passive, it's earned. Seneca observed, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Discipline anchors you in the present because you're no longer scattered. You're directed. There will be days when discipline feels heavy. That's normal. Don't romanticize ease. Respect effort. On those days, reduce the task but never abandon it. Lower the volume, not the standard. This teaches your mind that you are reliable even under pressure. Over time, this reliability becomes confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't need validation. Discipline is also how you protect your attention. In a world designed to fracture focus, choosing where your mind goes is an act of self-respect. Practice periods of intentional silence. No input, no noise, just presence. This trains restraint, and restraint sharpens judgment. Epictetus warned, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Discipline keeps you rooted in what you can control. Watch how your identity shifts as discipline becomes habitual. You stop asking, can I do this? You start asking, is this worthy of me? That's the upgrade. That's self-respect maturing into self-command. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your life reflects the standard you live by. Take action today. Choose one habit, guard it fiercely, execute it cleanly. Let discipline become your daily vote of self-respect. Over time, you won't need motivation. You'll have something better. You'll have trust in yourself. And once you have that, everything changes. Number 3, emotional mastery is true power. Emotional mastery is true power because it's the one form of strength no one can take from you. Money can vanish, status can shift, approval can evaporate overnight. But when you learn to govern your inner world, you become steady in a way most people never experience. You stop being dragged around by moods, impulses, and reactions. You begin to choose, and choice is freedom. Wrote, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Read that again. That sentence alone can change how you move through the world. Most suffering isn't caused by events themselves, but by the meaning you attach to them. Emotional mastery is learning to pause before assigning that meaning. Right now, emotions may feel like something that just happens to you. They rise, they fall, they hijack your attention. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress them or pretend they don't exist. It asks you to see them clearly, to recognize them as signals, not commands. Epictetus was relentless about this. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things. That's the core of emotional mastery. You stop arguing with reality and start working with your perception. When you change how you interpret what happens, your emotional response changes automatically. You build this power by slowing down your inner reactions, not stopping them, slowing them. There's a gap between stimulus and response, and most people never notice it. You're going to live in that gap. When something triggers you, take a breath before doing anything else. One breath, that's it. That breath creates space. And in that space, you regain control. This isn't theory, it's training. Every pause strengthens your ability to remain composed under pressure. Emotional mastery also means you stop outsourcing your peace. You don't wait for circumstances to align or people to behave correctly. Seneca said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Worry, resentment, and anticipation drain you long before anything actually happens. You reclaim energy by staying grounded in the present. Ask yourself often, is this thought useful right now? If it isn't, let it pass without wrestling with it. Not every thought deserves engagement. Another shift happens when you stop identifying with every emotion you feel. You are not your anger, you are not your fear. You are the awareness observing them. Reminded himself, today I escaped anxiety, or no, I discarded it because it was within me. That's a powerful reframing. Anxiety wasn't an external enemy. It was an internal habit, and habits can be changed. When emotions arise, name them quietly. This is irritation. This is disappointment. Numbing creates distance. Distance creates control. You strengthen emotional mastery by embracing discomfort voluntarily. Avoidance makes emotions louder. Exposure makes them manageable. Sit with discomfort without immediately numbing it. No distractions, no mental escape. Just observe the sensation. Where does it sit in your body? How intense is it really? You'll notice something surprising. Emotions peak, then fall, even if you do nothing. This teaches your nervous system that you don't need to react to survive the feeling. That realization alone is liberating. Make reflection a daily practice. At the end of the day, review your emotional responses, not to judge yourself, to study yourself. Ask, where did I lose control? Where did I stay steady? Seneca recommended this exact exercise, saying that self-examination was essential for progress. Write down one moment you handled well and one you didn't. Then ask what belief fueled the reaction. You're not fixing emotions directly. You're adjusting the beliefs underneath them. Emotional mastery also sharpens your presence. When you're not consumed by internal noise, you become more attentive, more grounded, more deliberate. You speak less impulsively. You listen more fully. You act with intention. This is why emotional discipline commands respect without demanding it. People feel when someone is not internally chaotic. Calm becomes contagious. You'll notice resistance as you practice this. Part of you may want to justify reactions. Let that go. Stoicism isn't about being right, it's about being free. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom isn't doing whatever you feel like. It's not being controlled by what you feel. Big difference. Here's a practical exercise to anchor this daily. Each morning, set one emotional intention, not a goal like be happy, but a stance. Calm, patient, composed, write it down. Throughout the day, when emotions rise, ask yourself if your response aligns with that stance. This isn't about perfection, it's about direction. You're training consistency. Another exercise is negative visualization. Briefly imagine things not going your way. not to become pessimistic, but to reduce shock when reality doesn't cooperate. Practice this daily. When you rehearse adversity mentally, you're less emotionally reactive when it appears. Preparedness breeds calm. Over time, emotional mastery rewires how you experience life. You still feel deeply, but you're no longer dragged under by every wave. You become steady water, not crashing surf. This is not detachment from life. It's engagement without enslavement. You care, but you're not consumed. You act, but you're not frantic. Take this seriously. Practice daily. Protect your inner state like something valuable, because it is. When you master your emotions, you master your direction. And when you master your direction, life stops feeling chaotic and starts feeling intentional. That's real power, and it's available to you every single day, starting now. Number 4, detachment creates inner freedom. Detachment isn't coldness. It isn't indifference, it's clarity. It's the moment you stop gripping life with white knuckles and start holding it with open hands. Most of your stress doesn't come from events themselves, but from how tightly you cling to outcomes, people, approval, certainty. The Stoics saw this long ago. Epictetus said it plainly. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens. Then you will be happy. That sentence isn't passive. It's powerful. It's an invitation to stop exhausting yourself by fighting reality and start reclaiming your inner space. Right now, you may not realize how much energy you lose every day by attaching your peace to things outside your control. Opinions, results, responses, timing. When you attach yourself to these, your mood becomes fragile. Detachment cuts that cord, not by pretending you don't care, but by deciding where you care. You shift your loyalty inward. You begin measuring success by effort and integrity, not by applause or outcomes. And suddenly, you breathe easier, not because life got simpler, but because you did. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Detachment is that realization lived out. It's you choosing not to argue with what already is. You stop rehearsing imaginary futures. You stop reliving old moments. You anchor yourself here. Now, this doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. When you're detached from outcomes, your actions become cleaner. You do what needs to be done without dragging fear or expectation behind you. To build detachment, you start small. Notice where your emotions spike. That spike is a clue. It shows you where attachment lives. Instead of judging it, pause, take one slow breath. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If it isn't, release it deliberately. If it is, act calmly. This simple mental check, practiced repeatedly, rewires how you respond to pressure. This is Stoic training, not theory. You're strengthening the muscle that separates effort from obsession. Detachment also changes how you see yourself. When you're no longer defined by success or failure, praise or criticism, you become steadier. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Most suffering is borrowed from imagined futures or clung to from the past. Detachment pulls you back into the present, where action is possible and suffering is lighter. You stop over-identifying with thoughts. You see them pass like weather. You don't chase every cloud. Here's a practice you can start today. At the end of each day, write down one thing you tried to control that wasn't yours to control, just one. Then write one thing you did control well, your response, your discipline, your restraint. This isn't journaling for comfort. It's training your awareness. Over time, you'll notice a shift. You'll spend less time mentally gripping what you can't change and more time sharpening what you can. Detachment also brings courage. When you're not attached to being liked, you speak more honestly. When you're not attached to certainty, you take cleaner risks. When you're not attached to comfort, you grow faster. Epictetus warned, if you want to be invincible, make no treaty with anything that is not in your control. Read that again. No treaty, no negotiation. You stop bargaining your peace away for temporary reassurance. There will be moments when detachment feels unfamiliar, even lonely. That's normal. You're stepping out of emotional habits that once felt safe. But safety built on attachment is fragile. Freedom built on detachment is stable. You don't swing wildly between hope and disappointment anymore. You stay centered. Calm doesn't mean numb. It means grounded. You still feel. You just don't drown. Another exercise. Practice negative visualization, a classic Stoic tool. Briefly imagine losing what you're attached to, not to scare yourself, but to loosen your grip. Then return to the present with gratitude, not dependence. This reminds you that everything external is temporary and that your capacity to endure is stronger than you think. Did this often, not to become pessimistic, but to become resilient. Detachment also sharpens focus. When you stop obsessing over results, you can immerse yourself in the process. Work becomes cleaner, rest becomes deeper, decisions become simpler. You're no longer splitting your attention between what you're doing and what it might mean. You just do the work in front of you, fully, quietly. This is where inner freedom starts to feel real, not as an idea, but as a lived experience. Remind yourself daily, I can care without clinging. Say it until it sinks in. Caring is human, clinging is optional. The Stoics never asked you to withdraw from life. They asked you to engage without chains. Seneca put it beautifully. The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable. Detachment frees your mind from that anxiety, not by denying the future, but by refusing to live there. Watch how your reactions soften as you practice this. Watch how your energy returns. You'll notice you're less reactive, less defensive, less desperate for things to go a certain way. And in that space, confidence grows, quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need constant reinforcement. Make this a daily discipline. Detach from outcomes, attach to effort, detach from approval, attach to values. Detach from what you can't control. Attach to your character. This is not a one-time shift. It's a daily choice. But each day you choose it, your inner world becomes lighter, steadier, freer. This is why detachment changes your life. Not because it removes challenges, but because it removes unnecessary suffering. You stop being dragged by circumstances and start walking beside them. Calm, awake, unburdened. And once you taste that inner freedom, you'll protect it fiercely by letting go. Number 5, silence often speaks louder than reaction. Silence often speaks louder than reaction because reaction is usually borrowed energy. It's borrowed from impulse, from habit, from the need to protect an image. Silence, on the other hand, is owned. It comes from a place where you are not being dragged by the moment but standing inside it. When you choose not to react immediately, you are choosing sovereignty over your inner world. Reminded himself, the best answer to anger is silence. Not because silence is weak, but because it refuses to participate in chaos. You don't need to announce your strength. You demonstrate it by not being pulled off center. You already know how tempting reaction is. It feels productive. It feels decisive. It feels like control. But most reactions are just rehearsed patterns wearing new clothes. Stoicism teaches you to interrupt that pattern. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Silence creates a gap between the thing and the judgment. In that gap, you get to choose who you are going to be instead of defaulting to who you've been trained to be. This is not about suppressing yourself. It's about refining yourself. Silence is active restraint, not passive avoidance. When you pause instead of reacting, your nervous system settles, your breath deepens, your mind clears just enough for wisdom to step in. Words spoken from that place land differently, and many times you'll realize words aren't even needed. The moment resolves itself when you don't rush to dominate it. You live in a world that rewards noise. Opinions are currency. Outrage gets attention. Stoicism moves in the opposite direction. Seneca warned, "He who talks too much is often silent about what matters." Silence allows what matters to rise to the surface. It keeps you from leaking energy into every passing stimulus. You stop trying to win moments and start building a life. If you want to make this real, start by practicing delayed response. Not forever, just long enough to regain command. When something stirs you emotionally, commit to a pause of 1 breath, then 2, then 3. Feel the urge to react without obeying it. This is not denial. This is training. You are teaching yourself that you can feel something without becoming it. Silence also sharpens awareness. When you're not busy reacting, you begin to notice your own patterns. You see how quickly the ego wants to defend, how fast the mind wants to justify. That awareness is gold. Wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That sentence alone can change how you move through the day. Not everything deserves your response. Not everything deserves your voice. There's a quiet confidence that forms when you master this. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop chasing understanding. You stop filling space out of discomfort. Silence becomes your default, and when you speak, it's intentional. This doesn't make you distant. It makes you grounded. People sense that you are not easily shaken, and that changes how they relate to you without you trying to control it. Here's another exercise: daily intentional silence. Set aside 10 minutes where you do nothing but sit, breathe, and observe your thoughts without engaging them. No fixing, no judging, just watching. This is a Stoic practice of attention. Over time, you'll notice how loud the mind is, and how much of that noise you don't need to answer. Epictetus was clear: if you want to be invincible, make yourself indifferent to that which is not in your control. Silence helps you identify what's not worth your energy. You may fear that silence makes you invisible. It doesn't, it makes you selective. Reaction scatters your presence. Silence concentrates it. When you stop reacting to everything, you start choosing what you respond to. That choice is freedom. And freedom is addictive in the best way. You'll crave it more than approval. There will be moments when silence feels uncomfortable. Let it. Growth often lives inside discomfort. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." Each time you resist the urge to react, you strengthen your inner spine. You prove to yourself that you are not at the mercy of impulse. That proof builds self-respect quietly, steadily. Make silence a daily discipline. Not permanent silence, but conscious restraint. Before speaking, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this true? Is this coming from clarity or emotion? If the answer isn't clear, wait. Silence buys you time, and time reveals truth. Over days and weeks, you'll notice fewer regrets, fewer mental replays, fewer moments where you wish you'd handled things differently. Silence also reconnects you to your values. When reaction fades, intention steps forward. You begin to act in alignment rather than opposition. Your life becomes less about resisting what you don't like and more about building what you respect. Wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Silence clears the path for that action. Watch this every day if you need to. Remind yourself that you don't owe the world a reaction. You owe yourself discipline. You owe yourself peace. Start small. Pause longer. Speak less. Choose deliberately. Silence will begin to work for you, shaping your presence, sharpening your mind, and anchoring your life in a calm strength that doesn't need to announce itself. Number 6. Focus on what is within your control. Focusing on what is within your control is not a motivational slogan. It's a daily discipline, a way of seeing, a way of standing upright in a world that constantly tries to pull your attention outward, scatter it, exhaust it. The Stoics understood something most people still resist. Your peace doesn't come from fixing the world, persuading others, or arranging outcomes. It comes from mastering your own inner domain. Epictetus said it plainly. Some things are up to us and some things are not. That sentence alone can change your life if you stop reading it like philosophy and start living it like law. Right now, your energy leaks in 100 directions. You worry about reactions you can't dictate, outcomes you can't guarantee, opinions you can't control. Every time you do that, you hand away authority. You shrink without noticing. Stoicism doesn't ask you to stop caring, it asks you to care correctly. You are responsible for your judgments, your intentions, your effort, your character. That's it. Everything else is borrowed weather. When you confuse the two, you suffer unnecessarily. Here's the shift you need to make. Stop asking, will this work? Will they approve? Will this turn out how I want? Start asking, did I act with clarity? Did I show discipline? Did I respond instead of react? Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Read that again slowly. Strength is not in outcomes. Strength is in command. This principle only becomes real through repetition. You don't wake up one day suddenly immune to frustration. You train it, moment by moment. When your mind starts spiraling toward what someone else might do, say, think, or decide, pause. Label it, out of my control, not angrily, calmly. Then redirect your attention to the smallest controllable action available, your breath, your posture, your next deliberate step. This redirection is not weakness, it's precision. You'll notice resistance at first. The ego loves drama. It wants to fix, prove, convince, replay. Let it protest. You're not here to obey every impulse. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When you focus on what's within your control, imagination loses its grip. You stop rehearsing disasters. You start building stability. Make this practical. Every morning, take 2 minutes and write down 3 things you control today. Not vague ideas, concrete choices, your effort, your honesty, your attention. Then write down 3 things you release. Outcomes, reactions, timing. Read both lists out loud. This trains your mind to separate responsibility from obsession. Over time, the noise quiets. Another exercise, when you feel tension rising, ask yourself one question. What is being demanded of me right now that is actually mine to give? Not what you wish you could control, not what feels urgent. What is yours? Maybe it's patience, maybe restraint, maybe focused action. Give only that, nothing more. This keeps you from overreaching emotionally. Focusing on control also sharpens your standards. You stop blaming circumstances and start refining conduct. You become less dramatic and more deliberate. Epictetus challenged his students with this idea. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. You don't need to announce that you're calm. You demonstrate it by not being shaken. You don't need to convince anyone of your strength. You reveal it by staying steady. This practice will feel uncomfortable because it removes excuses. You can't hide behind chaos anymore. When something doesn't go your way, you don't ask, why me? You ask, how will I respond? That question is power condensed. It puts you back in the driver's seat, again and again. There's also freedom here. When you stop trying to control what isn't yours, you recover enormous mental space. You think clearer, you act cleaner, you waste less energy on resentment and more on progress. Wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Change the estimate. You change the experience. Build a habit of evening review. Before sleep, replay the day not to judge, but to refine. Where did you focus on what you couldn't control? Where did you act within your sphere? One adjustment is enough. Stoicism is not about perfection. It's about alignment. Over time, something subtle happens. You become harder to disturb, not cold, grounded. You still feel, but you don't drown. You care, but you don't cling. You move through life with a quiet authority that doesn't need permission. This is not detachment from life. It's engagement without entanglement. Watch this principle every day. Repeat it until it becomes instinct. What is within my control? Then act on it fully. Release the rest without bitterness. Seneca said, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Delay gives you space. Space gives you choice. Choice gives you freedom. This is how your life changes, not through dramatic shifts, but through disciplined attention. You stop wasting yourself on what you cannot command and start mastering what you can. And once you do that consistently, everything else, peace, confidence, direction, starts falling into place on its own. Number 7, ego is the enemy of clarity. Ego doesn't announce itself loudly. It sneaks in quietly, dressed as certainty, pride, defensiveness, the need to be right. You don't notice it at first because it feels protective. It tells you you're justified, misunderstood ahead of others. But slowly, almost invisibly, it clouds your vision. It bends reality to keep your self-image intact. And the moment that happens, clarity disappears. Warned himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Ego is that estimate. It's the filter that distorts what is, turning it into what flatters you or shields you. If you want to change your life, this is where it starts, by seeing how ego quietly interferes with truth. Clarity requires humility, not the weak, self-diminishing kind, but the strong kind, the willingness to see yourself accurately. Ego resists that. It wants you to defend positions you haven't examined, to react before you reflect, to speak before you understand. You feel this when you're quick to explain yourself, quick to justify, quick to feel attacked. That speed is the giveaway. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish." That line stings because ego hates it. Ego wants admiration, not growth, but clarity demands patience, silence, space, the courage to pause and ask, what if I'm wrong? You don't lose power by questioning yourself. You gain it. The Stoics knew that the mind becomes sharper when it stops performing. When you drop the need to appear confident, you start becoming competent. Ego is loud because it's insecure. Clarity is quiet because it doesn't need validation. When you notice yourself clinging to an opinion simply because it's yours, stop. Breathe. Let the grip loosen. You're not betraying yourself by revising a belief. You're refining it. One daily practice that cuts through ego is intentional restraint. Not everything needs your comment, your stance, your emotional investment. Wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." Silence isn't weakness here, it's observation. It gives you a few seconds to separate impulse from insight. Ask yourself before responding, am I trying to understand or am I trying to protect my image? That question alone exposes ego instantly. And once exposed, ego loses much of its control. Another habit to adopt is voluntary self-questioning. At the end of the day, take a few minutes and review your reactions. Not what others did, what you did internally. Where did you feel defensive? Where did you feel the urge to prove something? Don't judge it, just note it. Seneca practiced this kind of nightly review and called it moral accounting. It's not about guilt, it's about awareness. Ego thrives in unconsciousness. It weakens under attention. Ego also feeds on comparison. It wants you above someone or below someone, never simply with yourself. Clarity dissolves comparison by anchoring you in your own standards. Epictetus was direct. If you want to be invincible, make no treaty with yourself except this, that you will do nothing except what reason approves. When reason leads, ego follows reluctantly or steps aside. Your focus shifts from how you look to how you live. Here's a simple but powerful exercise. Once a day, deliberately admit internally that you don't know something. Say it clearly in your mind, I don't know. Sit with it for a few breaths. Notice how uncomfortable it feels. That discomfort is ego loosening its grip. From that space, curiosity enters. And curiosity is the doorway to clarity. A curious mind listens. It observes. It adjusts. You'll also notice that ego loves urgency. It pushes you to decide, react, conclude fast. Clarity moves slower. It waits for full information. It tolerates ambiguity. Reminded himself, do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. This wasn't a call to rush, but to prioritize what matters. Ego wastes energy on appearances. Clarity invests energy in alignment. If you want to rewire this daily, start your mornings with one grounding thought. Today, I choose to see things as they are, not as my pride wants them to be. That single intention sets a different tone. Throughout the day, when you feel friction, return to it. Ego reacts. Clarity responds. Let go of the idea that self-improvement means adding more traits. Often it means subtracting illusions. Ego tells you stories about who you are. Clarity asks you to test them. And when a story collapses, don't panic. That collapse is freedom. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Ego lives in imagination. Clarity lives in the present. Watch this principle every day. Observe your inner dialogue. Notice where pride tightens your chest, where defensiveness speeds your breath, where certainty arrives too quickly. These are signals, not flaws. Use them. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, humility over image, you clear another layer of fog. Ego is the enemy of clarity, yes, but it's also the teacher. It shows you exactly where your work is. And when you stop fighting to look strong and start committing to being grounded, your life begins to change in quiet, irreversible ways. Stay attentive, stay honest, and let clarity do what ego never could: set you free. Number 8, consistency beats intensity. Consistency beats intensity because life is not changed by moments of fire, but by quiet decisions repeated when no one is watching. You already know what intensity feels like. It's the surge of motivation that makes you swear this time will be different. It's the emotional high that convinces you you'll never fall back again. And then days pass. Energy fades. Reality returns. Stoicism was never impressed by intensity. It was built for endurance. Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Power over the mind is not seized in bursts. It's trained daily, like a muscle that grows only when worked gently but relentlessly. You don't need to transform your life overnight. That belief is part of what keeps you stuck. Stoicism teaches you to lower the drama and raise the discipline. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." Read that again. Let it settle. Your character, your confidence, your self-control, none of these respond to urgency. They respond to repetition. When you show up every day, even imperfectly, you begin to trust yourself. And self-trust changes everything. Intensity feels heroic, but it's fragile. It depends on mood. Consistency is quieter, almost boring, and that's why it works. When you commit to small, repeatable actions, you remove the need for emotional negotiation. You stop asking, "Do I feel like it today?" You do it because it's who you are becoming. This is Stoic identity in motion. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Intensity lives in imagination. Consistency lives in reality. Start by shrinking the task until it feels almost too easy. Your ego will resist this. Ignore it. The Stoics were ruthless about ego. What matters is continuity. 1 page, 1 minute of stillness, 1 deliberate breath before reacting. These actions seem insignificant, but they compound, not dramatically, inevitably. You are not trying to impress yourself. You are training reliability. Here's a practical exercise. Choose one habit so small you cannot fail it. 1. Do it at the same time every day. No exceptions. Missed days break momentum. This is not about perfection, it's about rhythm. Kept reminding himself to return to the task at hand. Do what nature demands of you at the moment. Not tomorrow, not when you feel inspired. Now, again, tomorrow again. Consistency also teaches patience, and patience is strength disguised as restraint. When you stop chasing quick results, you gain something better: stability. You become less reactive, less desperate for outcomes. Epictetus warned, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do." Consistent effort aligns you with that wisdom. You act without clinging to results. You build without constantly checking progress. Another exercise: track streaks, not outcomes. Did you show up today? That's the metric. Not how intense it felt, not how motivated you were. Showing up rewires your self-image. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. This shift is subtle but irreversible once it takes hold. There will be days when consistency feels pointless. Those days matter most. Intensity thrives on novelty. Consistency survives boredom. When you continue despite monotony, you're no longer dependent on emotion. You're operating from principle. Seneca put it simply: he who is everywhere is nowhere. Focused repetition grounds you. Scattered intensity dissolves you. You don't need more information. You need fewer promises and more follow-through. Make your commitments boring and unbreakable. Same action, same time, same standard. Over time, discipline becomes identity. Identity becomes freedom. You no longer argue with yourself, you act. Watch this every day if you need to. Let it remind you that change is not loud, it's steady. Choose consistency today, then choose it again tomorrow. That's how lives change, quietly, completely, and for good. Number 9, external validation weakens inner authority. External validation weakens inner authority in a way so subtle that most people never notice it happening. It doesn't arrive as a collapse. It arrives as a habit. A glance outward before you decide inward. A pause where your conviction should be. You start measuring your thoughts against imagined reactions, adjusting your posture to fit approval, softening truths before they even leave your mouth. Over time, you forget that authority was never meant to be granted from the outside. Warned himself, I can control my thoughts as necessary, then how can I be troubled? Yet the moment you begin outsourcing your sense of worth, control slips quietly away. You don't need validation because you're weak. You seek it because you're human. The Stoics never this impulse, they trained above it. Epictetus was clear. If you want to be invincible, make sure that no one can offend you. Offense only exists when someone else's opinion is allowed to pass judgment on your inner state. The more you look outward for confirmation, the more fragile your inner compass becomes. Every nod feels like oxygen. Every absence of praise feels like rejection. And without realizing it, your mood, your confidence, even your decisions become reactive. Inner authority is built when you decide that your values outrank applause. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means becoming rooted. You stop asking, was that good enough, and start asking, was that aligned? Alignment creates calm. Approval creates anxiety. One expands you. The other shrinks you into performance. Seneca captured this tension perfectly when he wrote, "He who is dependent on another for happiness is a slave." Validation is a subtle chain. It doesn't feel like captivity at first. It feels like reassurance, until you try to live without it. If you want to weaken the grip of validation, start with awareness. Pay attention to how often your mind reaches outward before it settles inward. Before you speak, before you act, before you decide. That pause is where authority leaks. When you notice it, don't judge yourself. Just interrupt the pattern. Take one slow breath. Ask yourself, would I still choose this if no one knew? This single question begins to rewire your decision-making. You move from performance to principle. Stoicism teaches you to build a private standard, one that does not fluctuate. Reminded himself daily, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice how nothing in that sentence depends on agreement. Your task is not to be liked. It's to be consistent. When consistency becomes your aim, validation becomes optional, pleasant when it comes, powerless when it doesn't. Here's a practical discipline: reduce how often you explain yourself. Explanation is often disguised validation seeking. You don't need to narrate your reasoning to feel secure in it. Try this for a week. When you make a decision, state it briefly and stop. No justifying, no padding. Let the discomfort sit. That discomfort is the withdrawal. Stay with it. You're teaching your nervous system that silence does not equal danger. Epictetus advised, be silent for the most part, or speak merely what is necessary. Silence strengthens authority because it signals certainty. Another exercise is internal scoring. At the end of each day, rate yourself not on outcomes but on adherence. Did you act according to your values? Did you maintain composure? Did you resist unnecessary approval seeking? This shifts your reward system inward. You become your own witness. And when you witness yourself honestly, you stop needing an audience. External validation also distorts self-trust. The more you rely on praise, the less you trust your instincts. You hesitate, you second-guess, you wait. Stoicism cuts through this by anchoring you in what is controllable, your effort, your intention, your discipline. Seneca said, the reward of a thing well done is to have done it. Let that sink in. Completion is the reward. Integrity is the reward, not recognition. There will be moments when validation is offered. Accept it without attachment. Enjoy it without feeding on it. Then let it pass. The goal is not to reject praise aggressively, but to metabolize it lightly. Like a breeze, not a foundation. Foundations must be solid, internal, unmoving. When praise becomes your foundation, criticism becomes your earthquake. A powerful daily practice is negative visualization, not of failure but of invisibility. Imagine doing what you do with no reaction at all. No applause, no acknowledgement, just the act itself. Sit with that image. Notice the resistance. Then notice the freedom hidden underneath. You begin to understand quiet confidence when he wrote, "Do what is right. The rest does not matter." That sentence alone can recalibrate your life if you let it. As you reduce your dependence on validation, your presence changes. You become calmer, less rushed, less eager to impress. This is not withdrawal, it's gravity. People sense when someone is not fishing for approval. There is respect in that restraint, but even that respect must not become the new validation you chase. The discipline continues inward. Take action today. Choose one moment where you normally seek reassurance and deliberately withhold it. Sit in the silence. Breathe. Observe your urge without obeying it. This is Stoic training in real time. Over days and weeks, your inner voice grows clearer, firmer, less crowded. You stop asking the world who you are and start answering that question yourself. External validation will always exist, but it no longer commands you. Inner authority does, and once that authority is established, your life stops wobbling with every opinion. You stand, calm, directed, unmoved. This is not confidence borrowed from others. This is confidence earned through discipline, and it is unshakable. Number 10, a calm mind is an unbreakable mind. A calm mind is an unbreakable mind, not because nothing ever touches it, but because nothing stays long enough to take root. You felt the opposite before, the restless loop, the inner noise, the constant reacting. Stoicism doesn't ask you to eliminate emotion. It asks you to govern it. Wrote, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Read that again. That single sentence carries more power than hours of overthinking. Calm is not weakness. Calm is command. When your mind is calm, you stop leaking energy. You stop arguing with things that already happened. You stop rehearsing futures that don't exist. A calm mind lives in the present without clinging or resisting, and that presence is strength. Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them." This is the core. The mind doesn't break because of pressure. It breaks because it stacks interpretations on top of reality until it collapses under its own weight. Calm removes the excess. What remains is clarity. You don't arrive at calm by waiting for life to slow down. You build it deliberately. Start with your breath, not as a vague relaxation trick, but as training. Several times a day, pause and take one slow inhale through the nose, then an even slower exhale. Feel the space between breaths. That space is your refuge. You're teaching your nervous system that urgency is optional. This is a Stoic practice in disguise. You're reminding yourself that you always have a choice in how you respond. A calm mind also comes from refusing mental clutter. You don't need to entertain every thought that appears. Most thoughts are noise dressed up as insight. Warned himself, do not let your thoughts run on ahead of what your senses report. That's discipline. When a thought pulls you into agitation, label it calmly, planning, worrying, judging, and let it pass. You're not suppressing it, you're declining to follow it. That distinction matters. There's a habit you must break if you want an unbreakable mind: constant stimulation. The mind cannot be calm if it's always consuming. Silence is not empty, it's restorative. Schedule moments of intentional quiet, no input, no escape, just you and your awareness. At first it will feel uncomfortable. That's because calm exposes the chaos you've been avoiding. Stay with it. Seneca wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." Calm requires containment, fewer inputs, more depth. You also strengthen calm by practicing voluntary restraint. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not every impulse needs expression. Each time you pause instead of reacting, you add another layer of stability. Epictetus advised, if you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your integrity. Calm grows when you stop outsourcing your emotional state. You don't need permission to be steady. Here's a simple daily exercise. At the end of the day, reflect for 2 minutes and ask yourself, where did I lose my calm today? Not to judge, to observe. Then ask, what was actually in my control? This practice sharpens discernment. Over time, you'll notice patterns. And once you see patterns, you can interrupt them. Awareness precedes change. A calm mind doesn't mean a passive life. It means decisive action without inner chaos. When you're calm, you act from principle, not panic. Reminded us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Calm removes hesitation rooted in fear. You move cleanly. You speak with intention. You rest without guilt. Another exercise, practice mental subtraction. When something feels overwhelming, ask yourself, what part of this is optional? Often it's the commentary, the imagined outcomes, the self-criticism. Remove those and what's left is manageable. Calm simplifies, it cuts through exaggeration. You will notice that as your mind calms, your tolerance for nonsense decreases. You stop chasing drama. You stop explaining yourself excessively. You become quieter, not withdrawn, but composed. Seneca said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Calm is the gateway to that enjoyment. Not excitement, not intensity, calm. Train your body to support your mind. Slow down your movements intentionally throughout the day. Not all the time, just often enough to remind yourself that haste is not a requirement. When the body slows, the mind follows. This is ancient wisdom, not modern hype. The Stoics understood the unity of body and mind long before neuroscience caught up. There will be days when calm feels unreachable. Accept that. Stoicism never demanded perfection. It demanded effort. Progress is enough. Each time you return to calm, even after losing it, you reinforce resilience. An unbreakable mind isn't one that never bends. It's one that always returns to center. Remember this, calm is not the absence of challenge, it's the presence of perspective. You will face pressure, you will face uncertainty, but with a calm mind, those forces shape you instead of shattering you. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Calm is mastery in motion. Adopt these habits. Breathe deliberately. Reduce mental noise. Choose restraint. Reflect daily. Simplify relentlessly. Do this not once but often. Calm is a practice, and the more you practice it, the more unbreakable you become. Before you leave, remember this. Stoicism was never meant to be read once and forgotten. It was meant to be practiced daily. Didn't write meditations for an audience. He wrote it to remind himself every single day who he chose to be in a chaotic world. And now you have that same choice. If even one idea from this video made you pause, reflect, or see your life differently, then let that be your signal. Come back to this message tomorrow, and the day after that. Watch it again when your emotions feel loud, when people test your patience, when life doesn't go your way. Repetition is how wisdom turns into strength. You don't need to control the world. You only need to control how you respond to it. That's where real power lives. If this video grounded you like it tells the algorithm to share this calm with others who need it. Subscribe if you want more Stoic reminders that sharpen your mind and steady your emotions. And most importantly, apply what you learned today. Quiet discipline, calm action, daily practice. Watch this every day and watch your life change.